if we did D1 or D2 or other zoning ordinances. So it's a very highly efficient land use. We're providing $250,000 toward public restrooms downtown, so that's a community benefit. We have affordable housing fund that can be used to match the affordable housing if we just provided affordable housing in the building versus the fund that can be expanded in the future. We've got 8 workforce units within the building. We have city park contributions of $170,000. We're looking at just under $5 million of annual tax base. And again, a lot of multimodal benefits of the project you would not be able to require if you had a traditional zoning ordinance. And then community benefits. So in addition to those benefits on the previous slides, we've got a lot of sustainability features. So we're looking for LEED Gold certification. It's a passive house, so we've incorporated a lot of those passive house principles. We've got a lot of renewable energy technologies, and if you have questions, we've got specialists here that can answer that in more detail, but we're really kind of proud of all these sustainability features. We've got double the amount of EV parking spaces required in other parking spaces that Chris mentioned in the beginning. We've got more than 10 times the typical bike parking, which I think is a real benefit and allows us to have 90% of our trips by non-automotive means, primarily electric building, geothermal, and so forth. So I think that these are a lot of the sustainability features that we want to cover. And now Eduardo is going to go through some of the renderings and show you some of the exterior things that we're providing as a benefit.
Eduardo Hernandez with Arts Architecture, based in Colorado. Just like LV, our offices are across the campus in Boulder, Colorado, very similar to you. What I want to make sure that you remember is that this process that you created, the due process of understanding a project in your city, has been carefully followed with the advice and comments from all of you, as well as the community, and a lot of advice from the planning office as well. Our vision has been to make sure that we meet your goals. What is your vision? What is the community? And density has been one of those discussions as it relates, more importantly, about how to utilize the land in the most innovative form. As you heard about the idea of us understanding your codes, development codes, design guidelines, and so forth, we're evaluating how to best meet that figure ground that comes to the experience that pedestrians have. The building as a whole is being broken into pieces such that it's layered both horizontally and vertically in a way that it presents, and I'm going to walk you through it, a really good interaction at the ground level. Most importantly, though, the building facade is made of brick, mostly of brick, that has a datum, a water line, if you will, that relates to the context, as Chris has shown you, to other buildings in the neighborhood. But the key is what happens at that level on which we all experience buildings. When you look up, it could be.
I'm okay to keep going. If we can extend the time, how long do you think you'll need?
It's going to be brief.
Okay.
You'll have questions on, but I'll just.
Yeah, sure.
What I wanted to show you is that the two main streets, Willard and Church, are very important for that interaction of the community as a whole, as we are on the edge of the campus and connecting to neighborhoods of different scale as you go south and east. But what you're seeing here is the corner of the building that becomes very important for us because it's defining, as your design guidelines outline, that iconic element that defines a gateway almost to the community as a whole, with 3 stories of a very porous facade that is very active. There's no retail component on this building, but the lobby itself is open to the public with a cafe, and it's almost a living room inside that is shared by everybody. And that's what you're starting to see here. As we go around it, you realize that not only then is the building coming out and pushing itself into defined front doors and so forth, but also we're creating little pocket parks that incorporate public art. The idea, though, as you're moving from north on the west side of the building south, the scale of the building changes as we eventually go from that retail component, the cafe, the porch or entry to the main building, this pocket park, and then the idea that we have townhomes that are related to the street itself. The recessed back, pretty much like the muse that you created here in Ann Arbor that's becoming a sense of comprehending for us what the city wants. And then what you are seeing is that the pedestrian is engaged at all levels as it kind of flows through with this building that comes in and out both horizontally and vertically. On the north side, to Willard, there's an access point to the garage, and the treatment of those walls is very carefully crafted with the idea of architecture as a medium to create artistic walls, if you will, that eventually connect you to the corner that is very porous with a lot of glass. We have been doing a lot of testing. I mean, we talked about some of the consultants. There's about 40 consultants on this project that's evaluating all kinds of things from the framework of sustainability, so it's economically feasible, environmentally responsible, and is equitable to everybody. The building needed to respond to the needs or the effects that we're going to have to the pedestrians as well as to the buildings that are around us. More importantly, then, the idea that we have some public realm, public fronts, right-of-way fronts, but we also have some neighbors to the east. This is the facade that is creating a buffer to the school to the east in such a way that it creates a green wall with the ability to put a mural, and then these elevated gardens that are not to be used but just contemplative, such that there's no connection between the people that live in the building and the child development school in the bottom. The same thing on the south side, the service drive that brings you that we hope is very active. We would love to have some events that happen on that drive, but it also is trash pickup and fire commands and so forth. But the idea is that there's a nice green break between us and the neighboring home. Hopefully I didn't go too fast and I didn't take too much of your time, but please, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate your presentation. We'll move on to staff presentation. Ms. DeLeo.
Thank you very much. As noted, this is the 711 Church Street Plan Unit Development, 2 petitions. One is a zoning district and supplemental regulations petition, and the other is the corresponding site plan. Overall, planning staff recommends denial of the project. We found that the zoning proposal fails to meet the standards of approval, specifically for beneficial effects, and does not provide benefits which could be achieved through other zoning classifications. And inadequate justification is given for consistency with the comprehensive plan. And therefore, we recommend denial of the site plan because it would not follow the zoning. We have provided a fairly lengthy staff report that I hope has detailed our findings fairly well. I'll go over some little bit of highlights. I'll ask you to a little bit flip between the staff report and the supplemental regulations. In the supplemental regulations, in Section 3 findings, they were written from your point of view with the benefits as proposed by the applicant team. They do the first draft of it. We have included the benefits that seemed applicable. Depending on the results of this meeting, those supplemental regulations may need to change based on the minutes of this meeting if it goes forward to City Council. But I mentioned the supplemental regulations. They have the full list of proposed benefits with a lot of details. Right now, I'll just give some highlights. I guess let me start by saying, agreeing the site is a little bit more than an acre. It's currently zoned R4C, and it's about a quarter of a block. The proposed benefits, the applicant has responded to the purpose statement of PUDs in the first place. Some of that PUD statement does call out that the district is to permit flexibility in the regulation of land uses and encourage innovative land uses and variety of designs and so forth. It does say that it shall not be allowed where it is sought primarily to avoid imposition of standards and requirements of other zoning classifications or other city regulations. It is our opinion that the project does not compellingly fulfill that intent, but that intent is non-binding. It is the intent. But where there is some more meat is in the standards for review, and there are 8 of them. And I will call out 3 of them in particular. The first standard is the PUD has a beneficial effect for the city, and there are examples of what constitutes a beneficial effect. There are several benefits of the project, no doubt about that. But we think when you look at the list of the benefits and then the list of what they are asking for, they don't line up. The proposed benefits could be achieved as well through existing zoning designations. Perhaps not to the extent requested, but maybe that's also the point. Maybe this is not, the size of the project does not fit the context of the site. The second standard for review is a beneficial effect could not be achieved under any other zoning classification and is not required to be provided by an existing standard. Staff found that the beneficial effect of increasing density and providing housing could be achieved with other zoning designations. And 4, the uses, standard number 4, uses being consistent with the master plan and policies or adequate justification has been presented. Again, fully acknowledging that it is okay to deviate from the comprehensive plan. If you provide a very compelling reason, you present a great case. And we have found on the whole that they have presented a case to deviate from the master plan, that R4C is probably not the right choice. But we don't think specifically the proposed 711 PUD is the right answer. We think it lies somewhere more in the middle, and they have probably justified a D2 zoning. And since our findings don't support their request, we have recommended denial. A little bit more specific about exactly how we found it doesn't meet. We compared the project to 4 other zoning districts, the R4E, multiple family dwelling, the C1A/R, campus business residential, D1, downtown core, and D2. All 4 of those significantly increased the density over the current R4C designation, and so that alone demonstrates the beneficial effect could be achieved under another zoning designation. Regarding the beneficial effects in general, as I will say it again because they have this project does have a lot of great things about it. But ultimately, it seeks 10 times the dwelling unit density as permitted in the underlying zoning designation. And if we go by past precedent of our admittedly now repealed premium standards, but we believe that those standards speak to some of the values of our community. And with a 15% of providing 20% of the proposed floor area as affordable housing, we either a little bit more than doubled or a little bit less than doubled the density. And again, they're proposing 10 times the underlying density. When projects use the LEED Gold premium, they got also around double the normal density. And this is about 10 times as much. And even if you added those together, the affordable housing plus the LEED, which we didn't used to we had a cap on it, but even if you double, we feel that the ask is far greater than the benefits proposed. And then regarding adequate justification for departures from the comprehensive plan, I feel I'm repeating, but I feel it's worth an important point. We understand that some aspects of our comprehensive plan are out of date, hence we are undertaking a review. But the land use element is not the only part of it. We are, as staff, fully committed to achieving the overarching goals that are well articulated across the comprehensive plan elements, such as increasing density to expand our housing supply in general and affordable housing in particular, realizing more sustainable developments, and we welcome projects that increase density. But along with those overarching goals are fundamental principles expressed in those elements of the comprehensive plan for sensitivity to context and respecting and preserving neighborhoods. Upon full consideration of this project, we find that the details fail to support the extent, scope, and scale of the proposed development. Again, they have provided adequate justification to increase the density and deviate from the master plan, but not as much as they request. Staff report also goes into just some basic details about the site plan that corresponds to the proposed rezoning. I feel that their presentation did a great job, a better job than I can summarize. I will just point out that despite our recommendation, should the Planning Commission move forward with this or a version of it, two items in particular should probably warrant some discussion. First is regarding the workforce housing units. We are not in the city is not in a great spot to monitor those housing units. It's not part of our normal procedures. It would be, I can't guarantee that would be a benefit in perpetuity. So you might want to consider switching them to be just more affordable housing units or workforce housing units with the understanding that it would be hard for us to monitor. Another is the downtown public restroom project. It's a pilot project. It's supposed to run for a limited period. Its future is also not certain. A very certain benefit would be for this project to include on-site public restrooms. That is not part of their proposal. We just merely point that out. As I mentioned a little bit, depending on the findings, maybe we need to revise the supplemental regulations after tonight. And I will say that the site plan is still technically under review. We are working on a fourth revision. We're down to very technical details. Should you find the zoning to be acceptable and recommend approval of it, you can be confident then of forwarding the site plan because it does match the proposed zoning. Not the underlying, but the proposed. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. I'll wrap it up by just pointing out in the packet you have the draft supplemental regulations and a development agreement. You also have some of the original documents from the applicant team. They're also available on the file, along with more than just those, but we've provided a few in the packet.
Thank you. And as a point of clarification, as I was reading and introducing the petition, I did, it's listed as D1, but for clarification purposes, it is R4C. And this is not the Liberty Division character overlay district either, just as a point of clarification. So I will recant that portion. Thank you, Ms. DeLeo. We are moving on to public hearing. This is an opportunity for persons to speak up to 3 minutes about this item. We'll first call on individuals present to speak to the commission and then remote participants. To speak during this public hearing remotely, please press *9 if listening by phone or use the raise hand feature if viewing through the web link. For phone access, please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-6634-1226. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand using the last 3 digits of your phone number or by name if available. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. And when speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background noises so that we can hear you clearly. For either method of participation, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone present that would like to address the commission at this time? Hello.
Hello. I'm Mark Gerstein. I live at 1321 Forest Court, where I've lived for 40 years. I'm vehemently opposed to the application for a PUD project for this site at 711 Church Street. I strongly support the analysis of Alexis DeLeo and the Planning Department that strongly recommends denial. You have a professional planning staff with expertise and experience. You should listen to them for a change. The proposed 17-story luxury student apartment building is totally out of character with the surrounding R4C neighborhood. As you can see, it's enormously large. It is certainly larger than, the university building across the street from it. It disregards and disrespects the existing buildings between Willard and Hill Street, an attractive area of well-maintained residences, fraternity and sorority houses, ample greenery with large older trees, and a mix of long-term residents like us and student renters. The proposal ignores the residential buildings on Forest Court and takes no account of the play yards at the Towsley Children's House that abuts the site. And again, I think as the university has let you know, it will have an egregious, a terrible impact, on the children there. The proposal is in total violation of the zoning created by the city in the recent past, establishing D1 and D2 zones, as Alexis DeLeo has pointed out, with step-downs to preserve the integrity of the surrounding R4C zones. On Church Street, D1 zoning stops at Willard. This proposal is an attempt to use the PUD process to totally circumvent and bust open the current zoning. If this PUD project is allowed to go forward, it will destroy the zoning regulations negotiated, voted on, and established by City Council, and open the whole area to opportunistic development. This City Council, this is not how city planning should be done, nor should this city remake its previously approved planning documents through such single-site spot zoning. There is no discernible public benefit in this PUD proposal. I'm waiting for the public restrooms that they'll certainly offer on the ground floor. Any housing crisis in Ann Arbor, it will not in any way be addressed by this proposal, which will solely be marketed for high-rent student housing. I strongly urge you to reject this PUD proposal, as your planning department recommends, for such a large, out-of-scale, and out-of-character building that is in total violation of the zoning and will open the way for other such PUD applications in the R4C area between Willard and Hill and beyond.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present that would like to address the commission at this time? Hello and welcome.
My name is Eleanor Lynn. I live at 1321 Forest Court, less than a 5-minute walk to the east of these Church Street properties. The developer's proposal for a very tall student high-rise is out of compliance with the zoning of the neighborhood, the size and scale of the surrounding buildings, and the well-being of nearby residents. The neighborhood between Hill Street and South University is an attractive and tranquil area with well-maintained houses, ample greenery, and a harmonious mix of long-term residents and short-term student renters. Several guidebooks to Ann Arbor have called it a hidden gem. It is the kind of urban landscape that should be protected, celebrated, and replicated in our desire to make Ann Arbor a livable city. The Planning Commission made an error last year when it approved the oversized new student high-rise going up at 721 South Forest. One mistake does not justify another. Zoning exists for a purpose. PUDs are meant to help develop otherwise unbuildable sites. They are expressly not intended to be a way to get around whatever zoning regulation a developer does not like. We will receive no benefits if this project is built. It will likely create more heat, forcing us to use more air conditioning in the summer. It will be no more energy efficient than other student high-rises along South University. It may limit our sunlight and the help of our heritage trees. The project, as it is proposed, would be disturbingly negligent of the young children at the U of M's Children's House, Towsley Children's House. They would not be able to use their play yard, a necessary part of their early childhood education. I also fear that this project will send a venomous precedent. The R4C houses that sat on this block were demolished with the understanding that a new R4C townhouse project would replace them. Now, with a large empty area, something must be done, but the new project needs to follow city zoning requirements of scale and character. Otherwise, any developer could promote a false replacement and then switch plans later on. We deserve better than that. I have a copy of my text. Does that go in the record?
Sure. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Dennis Tice, and I've been in business on Church Street for 38 years, born and raised in Ann Arbor. I've been here since the beginning, when none of this was zoned for this type of thing. I'm here to support it. The high-rises, the student high-rises that have been built over the years have done nothing but benefit the businesses, clean up the area, and also made the area safer. I think it's a great, eventually all these things the zoning will be changed. There's more coming. I also own a property, 723 Church, which is adjoining the building, the proposed building, and 1207 Willard, right across the street. I think this is in character with the area, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present that would like to address the commission?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly address a couple points. One is the workforce housing.
I think this is public comment, so we will have a discussion portion. Is it technically okay? Oh, okay, I guess, yeah, sure. Hello, welcome.
Yes.
Sorry, interesting.
So with the workforce units, we have been talking with the county housing office. As you may recall, on for those of you who are here, the 616 East Washington project, we have some affordable units. And it was the county that's going to be vetting the candidates for the affordable housing units in that high-rise over there. We've been talking with them about them doing the same kind of vetting for the affordable units on this site. So that vetting wouldn't be a burden to the city, it would be happening through the county housing office. And also, I'd like to just speak about the benefits of PUDs, this one compared to the PUD that was approved on Forest, since that was brought up. The contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund is going to be at least 35% higher than that project. That project was designed to lead silver. This is going to be designed to lead gold. And that project has an urban forest next to it that we had to design around and protect that urban forest. We don't have that urban forest here to design around. We have designed our building to permit more engagement with the public realm than we could at 721 Forest. So I just wanted to let those comparisons be available to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present that would like to speak to the commission? Seeing no one, do we have remote participants that would like to address the commission?
We do, Mr. Chair. Our first caller is Adam Yuskevich. You have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hi, this is Adam Juskevich calling from Las Vegas Drive in the 4th Ward. I support this development and disagree with staff's recommendation to deny the proposal. This site is surrounded by other buildings of comparable height and density in an area dominated by dormitories and other dense student housing, student hangouts, and academic buildings. This density is absolutely appropriate for the surrounding area and has a number of benefits for our city. We are in a housing crisis with high demand for housing and not enough supply. This will add a significant number of units to our local housing supply. That in itself is a benefit to our city. The location is easily walkable to campus and to local businesses that are frequented by students. It's half a block from Rick's and basically across from Pizza House after all. It's right in the thick of things in terms of student living, so residents will likely not need to drive much. This is great because we are in a climate crisis and, as such, are trying to cut vehicle miles traveled in half. I love that they are unbundling parking. I hope that more developers follow suit. Getting these residents close to their destinations and out of their cars helps our A20 goals as well as our Vision Zero goals. Furthermore, this building would pay $6.3 million into our Affordable Housing Fund, which Jennifer Hall and the Housing Commission can leverage into more wonderful developments like 121 Catherine, the old Y lot at 5th at William, and other projects coming down the pike. They're also contributing funds to other city benefits such as parks and public restrooms. These benefits to the city seem substantial to me, hence my disagreement with the assessment of staff. Please approve this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other remote callers?
We do, just one moment.
Sure thing.
Our next caller is Eric. You have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hi, this is Eric Goldberg calling from the 5th Ward. I'm in support for this proposal for 711 Church, in spite of staff's recommendation to deny it. Currently, we're facing a housing shortage with a demand that far exceeds our supply. Introducing a significant amount of housing units to this project is a direct benefit to our city. The location in question is surrounded by structures of similar height and density. This zone is heavily populated by dorms and students, concentrated student accommodation, social venues, and educational buildings. Such density is not only fitting for this area, but advantageous to our city. Moreover, the site's proximity to the university and various local businesses, popular with students, and being just a short distance from those businesses places it at the heart of student life. This likely means less reliance on vehicles for residents, aligning perfectly with our efforts to address the climate crisis by aiming to reduce vehicle miles traveled. Encouraging students to walk rather than drive supports our 820 and Vision Zero objectives. Additionally, the promise to contribute $6.3 million to our affordable housing fund is a huge and undeniably important success for affordable housing at Arbor. Given these considerable benefits to our city, I stand in disagreement with the staff's negative appraisal and the recommendation to deny the project. The argument that because there are zoning districts that allow for more density than R4C, you can't do a PUD does not strike me as compelling against the multiple crises we face from housing to climate. The time for this level of inflexibility is decades past. Zoning rules serve us, we don't serve zoning rules. Our planet simply cannot wait. Would-be residents who are instead forced to be township commuters cannot wait. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good. And in this case, do not let perfect be the enemy of amazing. Do not let minute details let us miss the forest for the trees. I urge you to give your approval for this project as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Other callers?
There are 4 additional hands raised. Michelle Hughes, you have permission to address the Planning Commission next.
Hi. When I was watching the petitioner's presentation just now, I thought, this looks really good. I'm just concerned it's going to be too expensive. Oh, wait a minute, they're paying us? Because it brings so many benefits to the city, even beyond the benefits that, even before you get to the benefits that they are, providing as benefits. So it's like they're providing us benefits in order to allow them to do this damage to us, but the damage is that they're going to fix our housing crisis for us. So I don't really see why we should have to, demand more and more from them when they're doing exactly what we need to be done on that site. It's downtown, it's in an area that I would consider downtown. It's a student neighborhood, and they're going to put some student housing in there, and that's perfect. The University of Michigan keeps on enrolling more students, and they've got to live somewhere, and the students in our town are the people, they're future townies, and they're people who create, they're part of what creates the culture and vibrancy that we're so proud of here, and I would love to see an opportunity for more such people to become townies one day, and to be a part of our town and our culture now. So I think that we shouldn't treat this like it's something like we're doing, like they have to do us a big favor to make up for the damage that they're doing us, because they're doing us a great service just by building the housing. And then on top of that, they're giving us as much money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as the millage got in an entire year. So let's make this happen.
Thank you.
Some additional hands have raised. There are currently 5 hands raised. Meredith Kahn, you have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hello, good evening. My name is Meredith Kahn, and I'm a resident of the 5th Ward, the Fightin' Fifth, the mightiest of the wards. But tonight I'm speaking to you as a member of the Board of Directors of International House Ann Arbor, located at 921 Church Street. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of IHAA to express our support for the 711 Church Street proposal before you this evening. International House Ann Arbor is a nonprofit that is currently home to 52 residents from 33 different nations, including students and scholars seeking refuge from international conflict. We provide residential and educational programs, fostering intercultural understanding and respect, and we've been part of the campus community since 1888. Like many of you, we have a vested interest in making Ann Arbor a vibrant, diverse, and more equitable community. For this reason, we would like to express our support for the public benefits being offered by the 711 Church Street project. This project, as proposed, would bring over 1,000 new neighbors to an area adjacent to campus. Increased housing density close to where people work, attend school, and pursue leisure activities will allow more residents to live in one of the most desirable communities in our state. This density and the increase in housing supply it will allow is itself a public benefit. Density helps reduce reliance on private vehicles for transportation, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Density provides foot traffic and the customers necessary to support small businesses. And density via new construction provides tax revenue to support local transit, schools, parks, libraries, and many other government services, including support for the construction of subsidized affordable housing units. International House Ann Arbor has long provided a home to students and scholars from around the world, and we know that what makes our neighborhood special is precisely its proximity to campus. But we recognize that Ann Arbor's housing market is becoming increasingly unaffordable due to restrictive zoning. People want to live here, and they always will. So let's make it easier for more people to join our community by building more housing in neighborhoods close to campus. So as a nearby neighbor to 711 Church Street, we at International House Ann Arbor hope that you will vote affirmatively to recommend approval of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Adam Goodman. You have permission to address the commission.
Hi there, Adam Goodman, also speaking to you from the 5th Ward. I'm talking to you tonight because I think this is a fantastic project, and it's fantastic because it meets so many urgent needs that our community faces. First up, it would directly provide lots of student housing, less than 2 blocks, maybe arguably less than 1 block from central campus. This is badly needed as the university has increased enrollment by thousands in the last several years. This would provide $6.3 million contribution for affordable housing. Also badly needed because the city has ambitious plans to build subsidized affordable housing on city-owned lots, and we don't have enough money to do it, especially as development costs continue to escalate. The total amount from our affordable housing millage in the FY24 budget is $7.2 million. So this one project would nearly double our annual affordable housing revenue for the city. That would be huge. And finally, if I understood the reports correctly, this is fully electric except for a backup generator with other significant sustainability elements. And again, the Planning Commission has been working hard and struggling to see projects like this come to the table, and here is one. But, we have this denial recommendation, which frankly, I found this very concerning. I think that recommendation goes well beyond what's strictly required by a strictly technical analysis of the UDC and comprehensive plan, and veers quite far into opinions and value judgments. And I mean, we're really using repealed code to identify what we think this community values. How could you possibly justify that? So I really want to applaud the developer for bringing this proposal in spite of, pushback from the planning department and not scaling it down dramatically as our city planners apparently want. By the way, I actually went and took a little bike ride down Church Street today, and I haven't internalized from the map just how close this is to Arbor Blue. Like, it's literally kitty corner, and it's directly across the street from Dorm. So, the idea that the size of this project doesn't fit the context of the site, that's laughable. And, healthy cities do often have different sized buildings in close proximity to one another, and they can coexist peacefully, I promise. So, all this is to say, I think this is the right project in the right place at the right time, and I hope to see a strong show of support from the commission tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one moment. Our next caller is phone number ending in 534. You have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hello, this is Tom Stallberg again, calling from 1202 Traver Street in Lower Town. I agree with staff's assessment of this project. Zoning is law. There are criteria we're supposed to evaluate things by. I hear definitely loud and clear some of the things that have been said by the applicants and some of the other speakers. That's part of why we have a comprehensive plan revision process, so we can voice those things, and perhaps we would change the comprehensive plan for this area, in which case perhaps this building, this project could meet a new comprehensive plan that would call for something like this. Until such time, though, I agree with staff's assessment. I would like to point out, zoning law also needs to be consistent. It's a very important thing. We cannot simply do things because we'd like to do them. We get in a lot of legal trouble as a city if we do not have consistency. Arbitrary is not good for zoning law. We saw with Southtown, where it easily could have been a PUD, and it actually was approved as something else, which did not meet what the court feels is the legal way to do conditional zoning. We lost $3 million of affordable housing by not approving that as a PUD. Here in my neighborhood in Lower Town, we lost $9 million in affordable housing by approving a PUD in disguise, a very convoluted way of crafting something to mimic a PUD but not actually be a PUD. $9 million of affordable housing is lost. So I am looking at this and the $6 million affordable housing here, and I'm really wanting that $6 million of affordable housing fund. And I would much rather have that, a PUD with $6 million of affordable housing, than another PUD in disguise that would give us the exact same building, but without the affordable housing. I don't see that happening here. I'm not worried about that happening here. But I certainly am concerned in other places if we zone inconsistently, find ourselves in legal jeopardies that could end up costing us affordable housing on other properties, other projects that come in. This is darn close to where this proposed building belongs. It's an attractive building. I think a lot of thoughtfulness went into the design, and perhaps after the comprehensive plan revision is completed, that this would be appropriate location. But at the moment, I agree with staff's evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Ellen Ramsberg. You have permission to address the commission.
Good evening. I'm Ellen Ramsberg. I live at 1503 Cambridge Road, about a block and a half from the site. I also agree with staff's very well-reasoned report. I thought planning staff drew a balance between the what is the context of this site, and pointed out ably that that increasing density, increasing housing would be possible under other less impactful zoning, D2 or even R4C. We could increase housing stock, but not have the negative impact on both the child care center and on the surrounding neighborhood, which is lower scale. And I disagree that South University has become, because of the new buildings, has become a more cleaner, safer area. It is for anyone who is not a student, it is a very unwelcoming area. I think that the flexibility that the applicant seeks in the PUD could be achieved with the D2 zoning or even a R4C zoning. The request is not really for flexibility, it's for increased profit. These will be expensive housing as new student housing always is. I don't think the benefits warrant a change in zoning. I think the speakers who have spoken to the necessity of adhering to our comprehensive plan until it is revised are wise points to be made, and that the council, that the planning commission should really respect the expertise of its planning staff in pointing out the dangers of changing this to a PUD zoning and allowing a building that is so massive in scale, so much larger than its neighbors to the south. So I urge you to give this considerate attention and to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next caller of 3 remaining hands is Brandon Dimcheff. You have permission to address the commission.
Hi, this is Brandon Dimcheff calling in from 1401 Harpst in West Larrytown in the 4th Ward. I'm calling today to ask the Planning Commission to approve the rezoning and site plan for 711 Church. If approved, this project will provide 1,011 beds of much-needed student housing a block from campus and contribute over $6 million to the Affordable Housing Fund. This building will allow those 1,011 students to live on this small site instead of occupying over 160 six-bedroom student houses in Burners Park. The recommendation for denial seems to be based on the opinion that the scale of the development is too large for the neighborhood. I disagree. This building fits in perfectly with the neighborhood. It is across the street from a dorm, adjacent to fraternities, kitty corner for another student high-rise, and it's the south of a parking structure. It is not in the middle of a quiet, single-family residential neighborhood. It is even 1 block closer to campus than another recently approved student housing development. This area should have been upzoned by now, but for the delay to the comprehensive plan as a result of COVID. The neighborhood is almost entirely students and is a perfect location for more dense student housing. The children at Towsley will not be harmed by playing adjacent to a building, and shade will not fall on them until deep into the hottest part of the late afternoon, when they probably won't be happy to be out of the sun. Speaking of shade, it's not just going to shed, I'm not going to shed a single tear if a sliver of shadow is cast upon the parking structure, the beer pong table visible on Google Street View, and the people waiting in line in Rick's Bar Family. The only thing denying this will do is cause a worse, smaller project to be built, deny us $6 million to the Affordable Housing Fund, and put us further behind in addressing our housing shortage. We need to say yes to solving one of our biggest problems facing our city. Density is good and a benefit in itself, and it promotes efficient land use. So please approve this much-needed housing tonight, secure the $6 million for Affordable Housing Fund, and bring us 1,000 people closer to solving our housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our second to last caller is Ross Smith. You have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hi, this is Ross Smith calling in from the 5th Ward, and I fully support this project. I think it's shameful to be quoting repealed city code as justification for a no response. And unlike people living in luxury single-family housing in the area, this is going to bring millions into our affordable housing fund. This is completely in character for the area. The lawyer stated it's across the street from a dorm. If this was U of M buying the property, they could throw up exactly this project, and we just wouldn't get anything from it. Aside from housing a lot of people, which is a tangible benefit to our community, the developer is giving us other things. They're great. And yes, like no children are going to be harmed in the construction of a building. Like that's downright silly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other callers?
Our last caller is Eric Zechar. You have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hello, this is Eric. I'm up at Prairie Street, which is in the 2nd Ward, in the northeast corner of town. And I'm just calling to say that I agree with most of the callers tonight. I think this project should be approved despite the recommendation from the planning staff. I disagree that it doesn't have any community benefits. It has a lot of benefits that justify the zoning. I heard earlier tonight some people saying we should deny this project because we're not there yet on a much delayed comprehensive plan. That zoning is law, and yeah, that's true. And a PUD is legal. It is part of the lawful zoning process, and it's completely ethical to approve a PUD if it meets the community benefits, like this one does. The $6 million in affordable housing contributions, I mean, come on, that's a huge benefit. And just providing student housing in this area, in an area of town that's walkable, that's already full of students, despite some earlier commenters. This is not a quote-unquote residential neighborhood, it's student housing. Even the residential areas directly adjacent to it, if you look on Google Street View, if you ride your bike past them, each house has about 6 or 8 mailboxes on it, and they've got beer pong tables right up front, like the other callers said. There's some people who consistently call in to rail against this and any other development of housing in the city, but delaying and killing projects by process is just a well-known tactic that we've seen a lot of times before, people who just want to use any lever possible to obstruct change in the city. As far as zoning goes, I mean, I live on Prairie. Some of you may remember there is a U of M credit union that was recently approved to go in at the end of my residential street. And it is perfectly legal for the U of M credit union to build a single-story bank right next to another bank that's another block down from 6 more banks. And so zoning may be a legal process, but it does not always get the best results when you're dealing with antiquated zoning and much delayed plans. So, I mean, look at this project. This project is fantastic, lots of benefits. Would you rather see something where you're replacing it with a drive-through bank or a single-story house? I think the answer to that is pretty easy. So I would urge you to vote yes, do the right thing, and, you know, make this a better place for students and other people to live. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last caller.
Okay. With that, I'll close public comment. I'm going to read off the proposed motions, and I would like to have a discussion with the Planning Commission with respect to whether we'd like to take both motions together or separately. So I will read them right now, and then I will ask the Commission briefly if they would like to hear it together or separately. The proposed proposed motion is the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission recommends that the mayor and city council approve the 711 Church Street Plan Unit Development Zoning District and supplemental regulations subject to the necessary revisions as directed by the City Planning Commission. The second motion is the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission recommends that the mayor and city approve the 711 Church Street Plan Unit Development Site Plan and Development Agreement subject to addressing outstanding review comments. Commissioner Weich. Yeah. Oh, no. I was actually gonna ask the commission before we move whether we'd like to take this together or separately. Does anybody have any strong feelings with respect to that? I think we can probably hear this one together. So reading them concurrently, I will say moved by Commissioner Weich and seconded by Commissioner Mills. We are in discussion. Thank you for all of the comments. Who would like to kick us off? Commissioner Weich.
Thank you. I want to first thank the petitioner as well as all of the members of the public who spoke about this petition. And I also just want to say thank you to the petitioners for bringing this proposal to us, especially in this climate. It took me a while to move through all of the documents that have accrued since this came as a pre-proposal or a pre-PUD, and I actually had to reach out to planning staff because some of the documents weren't available on our public systems, but they were referenced in other documents. And it looked like there were some 40 documents exchanged back and forth regarding this, and I tried to review them all. Because it's been a very significant process. So one, I just want to thank you all for bringing this project to us. I think it's a good project. I plan on supporting this project tonight here at the table. There are a couple things that I wanted to highlight before I got into my questions. One, I think as you present to us and then eventually to City Council, because this will move past our table to City Council, who will make the ultimate decision, that you may want to be more explicit. I know you already have your community benefits document, which is a PDF that's been attached, but more explicit around the affordable housing. And you've heard from a number of callers about that. The $6.3 million, based on my back of the napkin calculation, using the 121 Catherine Street project as a financial guide, or 2270 Platte Road as a financial guide for developing affordable housing in our community, means that your 6.3 contribution has the potential of creating 357 units of permanently affordable housing for the city of Ann Arbor. I think that is a significant community benefit, and it should be highlighted. And it's using real-world data based on real developers who are building this kind of housing in our community. So your proposal proposes to build 273 units of market rate, but it also contributes up to 350 units of affordable housing. So I think that messaging should be made clearer. It was surprising to me from our last conversation with you that you were able to acquire a better land assemblage. So it looks like you were able to get those properties that you didn't show us. Is that correct? So you're going all the way to Willard at this point. So I think that that's another significant thing that needs to be highlighted. I saw that there was an addition of townhomes that you are highlighting. That was surprising to me. I didn't learn about that until it was highlighted on the slides that your architect brought forward, and that's to activate the ground floor. Again, I think it's important that we speak about, when we see these very dense, tall buildings, how you are making a human scale, and that's what we saw at 331 William Street, which I thought was a good addition to that project. The one thing that is missing, and I could not find it, and either staff or the petitioner can help me with it, because you have like 4 versions of your site plan in all of the documents. I could not see clearly on the site plan how you plan to handle the bike parking. So you have ground floor bike parking, but then you also have perennial bike parking, and so if it's available in either presentation, if someone can show me what that parking looks like, because one of the things that is missing as we build the parking, and thank you for increasing it from what you previously proposed to 575 spaces, but how are you planning to handle cargo bike parking and making sure that that bike parking is available at the ground floor, because those biking units are heavier, as well as how do you plan to help people park electric bikes where they might not be able to stand those up or lift them up on racks. So making sure that there's enough parking for those types of bike units. So if that's a question that I would like either staff or the petitioner to address. And then in the whoever spoke first, and I tried, not Doug, not your first, Christopher, not Christopher, but the second person who spoke after him, said that there was $13 million of public benefits. My calculations got us to $11,720,000, and I can enumerate how I got to that number. So I'm missing about $1.2 million of public benefit, and I would like that to be externalized if that number is in fact the case. Okay, that's where I'll start. So why don't we go with the bike parking if someone has an answer for that.
Eduardo is going to see if you can pull up the bike parking. Basically, we have the bike parking in two levels stacked, one on top of another. There's a ground floor entrance off of the vehicular access at the east side of the building that gives anybody riding a bike direct access from the sidewalk through the vehicular way. I don't know if we can blow that. No, we need the bike room. Yeah, it's not. Anyway, so part of the bike parking is at the ground floor. Someone would bring their bikes into the ground floor. There are parking spaces available there in a variety of configurations. And then if that part of the bicycle storage area is full, there's a segmented stairway leading to the lower level that has a bike rail in it, so you can wheel your bike to the lower level. And there's a larger physical footprint in the lower level than on the first level, because there's somebody competing with their needs for the first level. And then from the lower level, if you wanted to, when you wanted to use your bike, you could either take it up the stairs in the rail, or you could put it in the elevator, take it up to the first floor and go up.
Got it. Thank you. Any other commissioners would like to ask some questions or comments? Commissioner Weatherby.
All right, I'll start with some. So one thing that has come up that I saw, sustainability on this is going to be a big thing for me, because whoever lives in this building, however long it exists, that's going to be a big deal. I saw in the documents there were several different statements about the all electric of this building. One was all electric except for gas generator, for backup generator. One was all electric. One was all electric except for gas generator and hot water heating, or hot water. It's a big difference. And, I'm looking for all electric. So whatever you can do that gets closer to all electric is a lot better than the sudden, wow, it's all electric except for these 5 things that are going to exist.
I completely understand, and let me explain the evolution of those statements as documents were filed. As we began to work with DTE, it became apparent that the previous project, I was here before you all, 721, which committed over on Forest, which committed to be an all-electric building, ate up the remaining capacity in that circuit. And so they don't have the amount of electricity available to serve the needs of the building if we were to try to commit to all electric. So whereas that was our original goal as we began to meet with DT and find out what the circuit capacity was in the South University area, we began to have to figure out other alternatives because there isn't enough electric capacity in that part of the grid. We are able to get about half of the electricity we would need to make it an all-electric building. So we set our engineers about coming up with a design that would give us a stopgap measure until we could get to a point where the grid was updated and the city and the DTE could provide enough electricity to our project. And so what's been evolving is the design. So we're primarily electric. That is to say, our electric, our boilers are primarily electric, but they have auxiliary gas component to them. So that in peak periods of time when people are showering in the morning, or times when the temperature is minus 20 outside, and there just isn't enough capacity in what we can get from electricity, we have the ability temporarily to use auxiliary gas. I think you probably may remember that that's a similar situation in a hotel recently approved in Huron. They had the same problem. There just isn't the electric capacity to do that. We've also worked with an innovative geothermal company to figure out a way to put some geothermal bores between our foundation footings so that we can use ground source heat pumps to augment that, to really minimize that need for burning gas on site. But we've looked at it everywhere you can look at it, and there's just no way to build a building without some sort of auxiliary gas component to it until we get an upgrade in the DTE grid.
Okay, I was afraid that's what you might say. And this is just, I'm just going to say this, and I don't know with staff or the petitioner, if there are ways of somehow contributing to some, to somehow either adding solar or adding to a solar farm or being, somehow making allowances. I realize that's not your issue, but it's a PUD. So, we can ask for some of these things that, and I don't know what's available. So I'm sort of throwing that out there, which I know isn't super helpful to you. But it's a little, how is this going to be in the development agreement or in the supplemental regulations that means that you don't just go out and buy gas heaters? I accept that you are going to try and that you're doing a lot of work on this, but that doesn't help when we approve something if I don't see it in the documents. And saying we're going to have gas for these things, which I recognize is, again, not your fault, DTE. But I would just like to know that we're not just saying, oh, great, thanks, and moving on. So that's just something, but thank you for your statement. I also had a couple other questions. One was the $250,000 donation to the DDA for the public toilet. And I assumed that wasn't just something you all came up with, that maybe that was a recommendation somewhere, but it sounds like the city is not super keen on that. So I'm just wondering where that came from.
Oh, some people in the city are super keen on that.
Okay. So the planning department is unsure about that going forward, but that was a recommendation from?
Yeah, we had a list of urgent needs, if you want to call it that, from the city administrator's office, and that was the top of the list.
Okay. And then one more thing, just until I let it go to somebody else. The coffee shop, it looks like in some of the other areas, the coffee shop is not public. For some of the other LV collective, and that's actually been a point of contention where security guards are escorting members of the public out after they get their coffees. And so I'm just wondering, is it, and I saw you said more, it was like a living room kind of part of, so is it a public coffee shop could be anyone? I know you have a particular group in mind, but could it be a Starbucks? Could it be preferably like a Ruse Roast or a local, not?
It is open to the public. It is a partnership that we've developed from an award-winning coffee roaster out of Austin. We've worked with them to help brand it, and they are on board everywhere we can find a place that works with them. We like it because it follows our goal of really energizing the sidewalk and the lower levels of the building, and we have it adjacent to our lobbies. Those, I'm not familiar with the cases that you brought up where people are being escorted out. In every building that I've worked to approve, it has been open to the public.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could be recognized.
Yeah, of course. Hi.
Thank you. Just wanted to note that typically when there are conflicts about the grid and DTE, documentation is provided, and I checked with Ms. DeLeo. I don't believe that we received that documentation, so it may be something the Planning Commission requests.
Thank you.
We do have a letter of service from DT which specifies what they can provide.
Sure.
And we have calculations from our engineer which tells us what we need to be an alternate, but we're happy to submit those.
That'd be great. Thank you. I will also note that the scale, if I just take like a $250,000 a unit or something along those lines, this is looking to be a pretty substantial project, right? And so based on the size, I think that there's also probably some level of collaboration that could be done as far as upgrading the substation goes. Obviously, that's as far as like equitable, contribution. We've talked about that at this table where it's like 721 goes forward, eats up most of it. It's like, how is that? And I think that's a point for further discussion. But as far as kind of like proportionality goes, because I think that's at the core crux of this discussion, just based on how the size of this, we've upgraded substations on different projects that had kind of a lesser amount. So anyways, just a point of clarification. But with that, are there other commissioners with comments, questions? I would like to, Commissioner Mills.
All right, so first of all, I want to say I don't think that this is out of character. And this is probably the place where I would disagree with staff, and I'll get to this in a minute in terms of like whether D1 is actually the appropriate zoning here. But to spoil the punchline, I don't think that PUD is appropriate here. I don't think that housing alone or density alone is the right benefit. By that logic, PUDs should be everywhere so long as they're willing to pay into the Affordable Housing Fund for density that exceeds the underlying density. And I don't think that that's wise. I don't think that that meets the intention of how PUDs are supposed to work. To be real clear, again, now I'm going to make everybody mad, I think this is the place for density. I think we need to reconsider where our D1 and D2 boundaries are. And I also want to be real clear, because I do know math. I recognize that if this were rezoned to D1 or D2, it wouldn't mean that we would have the payment into the Affordable Housing Fund. We would still get the payment to the affordable housing millage from anything that's built here. But I want to be real clear. I understand that rezoning to an established district would forego that. I think, though, in terms of what our code calls for, rezoning to a district to D1, this is what is drawn here is effectively D1. It makes that is the zoning district here, and I think we need to have this conversation about where the boundary lives. I don't necessarily know that we need to wait for to understand what happens in the planning, out of the comprehensive planning discussion. Just to be clear, I'm pretty sure I said this at the pre-approval meeting, so like none of this should be a super surprise. And so, but we're not talking about D1. That's not the proposal before us. It's for a PUD. And so I don't think that the density I don't think that, again, the public benefit of density alone meets our standards. And I think that there is another district that does that. So what would the public benefit be? And in my mind, it's maxing out the sustainability, which might be challenging here. But I just want to be clear, the reason, my understanding behind the reason for no natural gas connections is that once you have buildings that are hooked up to natural gas, it's harder to abandon those lines in the future. And so it just perpetuates this system. And so I think that that's problematic for me. Like, if I can see this, you're so close in terms of a lot of the sustainability benefits, but not having that, like, I don't see, I'm not sure what the public, I don't think that it meets the standard, that standard. So that's how I feel about overall whether PUD is appropriate. But for other commissioners' benefit, I'm going to do the comparison that I often do in PUDs, which is what's shown and then what's in the supplemental regs. So, to do this, I did the zoning comparison that I think was something that the petitioner provided. I appreciate it because it shows a lot of the details, to the kind of what's in the supplemental regs. And so just for everybody's benefit, the height, at least as shown, is in the site plan is 217. The supplemental regs allow for 230. The setbacks, I'm not 100% sure. The biggest setback in the supplemental regs calls for a minimum of 16 feet, and what's shown is 24 feet from in one place. So I'm not, but setbacks, I don't think that that's a huge, there's just a small discrepancy there. It's actually the vehicular and the bicycle parking that are quite different. So what's shown is 460 spaces. What the supplemental regs would call for is 1 for each unit, which would be 272 plus 10 guests. So what's shown is 460, 282 is what I think the calculation would be. And in terms of vehicular parking, what's shown is 44, the supplemental regs would allow up to 52. A question that I have around that is around the multiplier. So the supplemental regs require 20% EVI, and I see 6, and 20% of 44 would suggest that there needs to be 9. So I don't know if that's a staff or a petitioner, and I don't know if it's a typo or in which document. Staff, do you want me to ask the petitioner, or do you know?
I can shed some light. I was going to hold off raising my hand until maybe you completed your analysis, but I can jump in also.
I only have one other thing, and it's only quasi-related, so please. That was my, maybe there's more, and if there's more on there, but those are the key things that
regarding the height, I took editorial liberties. Also, my zoning administrator hat was put on, and the 230-foot height, it would include any mechanical structures or things. I think the height listed was maybe to the parapet. The height listed on the
comparison table, or the
right, perhaps. So I thought by articulating it as 17 stories and 230 feet, so that both would work in concert. It's 17 stories of livable area, and then the height of the building is 230 feet. We measure height to the topmost thing. So now this all can be changed. I'm just explaining why the site plan shows 212 or something like
217.
that. 217 and 230 was put in. Regarding the setbacks, learning from Lockwood, the setbacks shown on the site plan are something like 1 foot, 0.7. I put 0. I took some liberties as a zoning administrator, and I thought, please discuss and correct me because this is your document. I did not see much difference between a 1 foot setback and a 0 foot setback, and especially not a 1.7 versus 1. It was written as 0 for enforcement and for some construction work. The bike parking spaces, in the supplemental regulations, it matches the zoning ordinance. So That number can be increased or decreased based on the benefits. If 460 bike parking spaces are important, that number can be inserted or the formula can be changed. Similarly, if cargo bike spaces or e-bike spaces are important, they can be added or not. Regarding electric vehicle charging spaces, the minimum 20%, the normal code minimum is 10%. So this is written to require double of the normal code. It can be revised to be a number of spaces or the percentage can remain, but that's where the 20% comes from. And I think the 44 to 53 vehicle spaces may be just some versioning, that one version of the plan might have had 52 spaces that got written to the supplemental regulations. The site plan as submitted has 44. Either one can be changed at the direction of the Planning Commission.
I point that out there because if you care about those things are things you might want to change. I'm curious, again, going back to our electrical conversation, about how many EV chargers are planned.
So we have designated 9 spots, but it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the supplemental regs are in essence the zoning for the parcel. The site plan is itself the site plan. So we have to craft a site plan that fits within the zoning. So it may be that the zoning contemplates a few more parking spaces than we actually are providing on the property, or a few more feet than we're actually intending to build.
Right. Yeah. It's more that if we stick with the supplemental regs that require 20% and you've got 44 spaces, then you're going to have 9. And if that runs into your electrical channel, I just want to make that clear to everyone. So
we had 9 in our calculation.
Super. Great. So the only other thing that I would point out, and I'm not sure that this raises to the level of public benefit, but in the presentation, it was highlighted the public art, which I think is lovely. I think that could be a public benefit. It used to be on our list of public benefits. It's not necessarily on the list right now of public benefits, but I think it could be lovely. But I don't see that in the supplemental regs or in the development agreement, and the question is, did I miss that?
Some of our supplemental regs, as you pointed out tonight, are still catching up with some of our design revisions. On the project documents, and I would be happy to flip. I can show you the proposed area. There you can see it under the residential porches and mews to the left, and it's a setback portion and an internal it's a outdoor public space, and then here it's highlighted a little further. So we were looking at a double height wall mural that faces church. It's been in our plan a long time. I think we've neglected to point that out to our attorneys preparing the supplemental regs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, of course.
Can I ask a point for clarification? If the workforce housing is part of the affordable housing community public benefit, and if so, where is the administrative burden of identifying and certifying tenants going to lie?
So we are proposing to have 6 housing units rent limited to that standard for workforce, which is 80 percentile.
Yeah.
Under the city's current definition of affordable, that doesn't fit because you have to be at 60 to be affordable. So it's an attempt to address a housing market that isn't addressed anywhere else in the code. So we are viewing it as a public benefit because we're limiting it to people who are in the workforce. And the city housing office, the county housing office would be the people that do the vetting of the applications, qualifying the individuals, and then turning over their names to the lease.
Okay, so they'll be maintaining like the Hawk central wait list. And is that a capacity that the county already has or works with the city, or will that be a new administrative function? I don't know who it is for that.
I can somewhat address that. This county does do monitoring work, but the city pays the county to do this work for us, and all of their standards and procedures go for low-income housing, which is 6% less. We don't have, they don't have the current procedures or process they would be adding on, and the planning managers informed me that the city doesn't have the resource or even the interest in coming up with a program specifically for these 80% units. And we would have to readjust our fee schedule and payments and contract with them to do that monitoring.
Okay. And then just to follow up with that, so is the developer proposing to contribute anything towards that? And then ignore that. My question was that does the developer have any provisions to ensure that these are going to be in perpetuity workforce housing, or is there anything guarantee of that we have, or is there a reason why they're not going to be strictly affordable units under 60 AMI?
We would be, we would be open to that being included in the, I think it is in the supplemental regs and the development agreement.
And is there a reason why 60 AMI or other low-income units aren't being considered?
Instead of 80?
Yeah, to fall better within the city's already existing administrative procedures.
We saw this as a gap in that current plan. I'm sorry. In many discussions, which we did have with Jennifer Hall and the county, we saw that as a gap in current need, and we saw it as something that could benefit as a community.
Councilmember Dish.
This one is so hard. Sorry, sometimes they resist you. There is really a lot in this project that is of value and that contributes to policy goals and values that we have. I agree also with Commissioner Mills that the project is not out of character. While it is significantly more dense than the existing zoning allows, this area has been transitioning. University Towers, which is actually a pretty old building, is 19 floors, and it's about a block and a half away. But this building is significantly larger than the 721 South Forest project that we approved. 721 was an 11-story project at 290,000 square feet. And 711 Church is a 17-story, 445, a little bit more than 445 square feet. You obviously know that. So there is going to be a feeling of greater mass here. And I think that it is okay to acknowledge that and keep things in perspective. So I don't feel fully comfortable with making the density comparison to the previous downtown premiums, which note that under those regulations, if you provided 20% affordable housing, which is more than this project is providing, you would get less than double the density. And if you provided 30% affordable housing, which is twice what this project is providing, then you would get just over double the density. And I'm not fully comfortable with that because nothing was built under those regulations. And so, and yet, 13 times the density, which is the calculation that I get, not 10. If the underlying is 21 and what is to be built here is 272, I think that's bigger than 10. That's a big increase. And as I say, this is a bigger project than 721 South Forest. So I am also left feeling like there needs to be more public benefit, and I recognize that there is significant public benefit here, but if I am reading the staff report correctly, while we can be thrilled about the 15% payment in lieu to the Affordable Housing Fund, that's in the regulations, so we can't count it as a benefit, or the regulations would ask us not to count that as a benefit. Is that what your table says?
It's listed as a benefit. It contributes to the Affordable Housing Fund.
Do you have that up? You know which one I mean? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Uses are consistent. Okay. Where is it? Is it?
This is what you were, go down.
Yeah?
It's number 5.
It's number 5. Yeah.
I think that's what you were.
Yeah. So, I mean, all right, it just says it's required, yeah. But meeting minimum requirements does not translate into an automatic justification of a proposal. So, yes, affordable housing is always appreciated and it is necessary to achieving comprehensive plan goals, but meeting minimum requirements does not translate into automatic justification of a proposal. So I guess I had a few questions for the petitioner, and then I'll just end with a question to staff, which is are there any additional benefits that, from staff's perspective, would justify the PUD here? I know that staff has significant concerns about the density increase, and you don't like that, and you didn't like it when we voted for it with 721 South Forest, but I'm also aware that we have urgent goals, and it is within our discretion to say we want those. So how close is this project? I know you say that you're incorporating passive house principles. How close is this going to be to net zero? That'd be one question for me, because all electric is fantastic. It is fantastic to show that it can be done in a building of this scale, but it's not the same as net zero. And this is a big building, and it's a lot of housing, and it's going to be there for a long time. And so that is a calculation that is entering into my thinking about the benefits. There is a note or a signal in the staff report for us to ask about renewable energy kilowatt hours, or RECs. If you could tell us about that. In other words, yeah, so how much of this is being achieved through credits also? I mean, are you offsetting to get some of your calculations? That's a separate question from renewable energy kilowatt hours. Okay, so yeah, those are my 3 questions. How close to net zero? Renewable energy kilowatt hours. Are you buying credits as you were in the 721 South Forest project as well to offset energy use? And then staff, do you have a wish list?
And do you know if representatives from US Ecologic are called in or waiting?
I believe so. Just give me one moment.
We have our sustainability consultants couldn't be here today, but we had planned to have them here online, so Chris is trying to reach them by text to make sure they're dialed in.
So US Ecologic, I did not see attendees. I'll check one more time. You have 2 attendees from DDG. At least I'm not seeing them under the names provided, Mark Holland or Marie Nissan.
Yeah, it would be Marie. Marie,
They're not.
If she's there, Mark Holland would be her proxy.
Are you referring to Marie Nissan?
Yes.
That person could join as an attendee, and I can promote them as soon as they join, if you want to circle back to the question.
Certainly. Is Mark Holland?
No, neither.
Okay.
The attendees from the attendee list I received who are currently joined are from DDG, two people. Oh, I'm sorry. You have one person from Geothermal Innovations and one person from DDG.
In the meantime, I can just give it, staff does not have a particular wish list. We don't have a particular wish list. We evaluated what was presented, and our conclusion was that it certainly warranted rezoning, but we did not think it warranted the scale and scope. Now, it is an opinion. It is based on our findings. This is not, there is no magic formula. These balance of quite a variety of factors, and it is very plausible that others arrive at different opinions.
Yes, thank you for saying that. It is just that since you make a strong statement that the benefits do not warrant the density increase, and I am leaning toward that, I hoped that you would have perhaps some suggestions as to what might warrant the density increase, so that, because there are many things about this project that I'd like to see happen, but I would love to offer some guidance for how this could happen as a PUD so that we get all those benefits, but that we actually, that the project is beneficial. It carries enough benefits to warrant this increase. So I was really hoping to ask for your expertise.
I do know that the Office of Sustainability and Innovation, in their comments, said that it must be a net zero performance standard. And the comments regarding comparing it to a repealed or deleted standard are very valid. But they do speak to what we did, what were our values, and we are in, I was going to say we are in uncharted territory. We are not in uncharted territory, but we are talking about deviating from our established plans. And so rather than pulling numbers out of the air as a way to compare, 20% affordable housing was a number that was kicked around. 30% was a number that was kicked around. And some of those other standards were, used to be standards. And so, again, rather than just, for me to say, oh, no, it has to be 16% affordable housing, I merely point out what were some former benchmarks as just a little bit of apples to apples.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful, and it helps me understand why you constructed the report with reference to the previous premium calculations.
And my only final point, and I know I'm butting in, but all of this was because we don't have any other recommendation to compare to. If the underlying zoning was different, our analysis might be very different if this was a different underlying zoning designation. But in the absence of a revised future land use map or a comprehensive plan that currently speaks broadly about, yes, increased density, but as you know, it doesn't say increased density here and not here, increased density everywhere. So we are anticipating what might be acceptable, but our anticipation assumptions may be different than others, and they also may be different than what does play out. But we are evaluating the petition as presented and the cards that we were dealt.
Thank you. Is that a direct reference? Okay, Commissioner Hammerschmidt. Okay, great.
Thank you. So I appreciate this petition. I appreciate all the public comments. I really appreciate Ms. DeLeo's very thoughtful analysis. This was the best staff report I think I've ever read. And this is actually how I wanted to start, so it's funny that this is how you ended. I wanted to address the fact that you did compare it to previous code. A couple of our callers said that it was basically shameful that you quoted a repealed code to justify denial. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I think you're just trying to show the comparisons. And I think calling it shameful after all of the hard work you did was incredibly unacceptable. Well, come on. You did a great job, and like that's not cool. And I just wanted to say that. That really bothered me. Okay. I'm just going to say a few things, and I have a few questions, and then I know other people have a lot to say. Probably more too. I know you do. So I do like a lot about this. I do sort of think it's too tall, but I also very much think that this site merits more density, and I do appreciate the step back attempt to the south. But I agree that this doesn't feel like a PUD to me. I obviously didn't think 721 South Forest should have been a PUD either, and I'm just again worried about a precedent that we're setting. And housing is critically important. I know that. The money for the affordable housing contribution is a lot, and I know that. But I'll loosely quote the most amazing staff report I've ever read: details and context do matter. And I'm just going to get into some specific questions. And I know we're trying to get somebody on to talk about kilowatt hours. There are some discrepancies. I just want to point them out to make sure, because when I read this in the development agreement, it said 100 kilowatt hours per year, and that had to have been a typo, is my guess, because that's like nothing. So I am also curious, like, what is the projected load per building and per unit? What is the projected offset with your solar array? I don't know who this question is to on your team, but you talked a lot about passive house, and I'm just curious, what are the technologies that you're referencing, and what is the target air changes per hour that you're trying to achieve? Is that a question for the person that's trying to call in?
That may be a question for one of them that's already on.
Okay.
With DDG.
There was a new caller ending in phone number 279. Is that your team member?
Yep. 8279.
It only shows me the final three. Can you identify who it is?
Yes. Sorry. That's with US Ecologic.
Team member with US Ecologic, you're unmuted.
I think it's just a phone number she's saying, or just the last three she's saying. They're saying. Oh, yeah, we don't want that.
That phone number that joined has permission to speak, so.
Mark?
Mark Holland.
Mark, are you there? Are you there, Mark?
I requested that they unmute. It can be tricky joining by phone.
Was it star?
The link was provided to all petitioners for Zoom.
Star 6, maybe, I didn't use?
Okay. Oh, there's Mark. It sounds like you made it.
Yeah, sorry about that. It kept telling me the star number to use. People kept talking. I couldn't hear the number.
So, Mark, we had a question from Commissioner Dish. Tell me if I get this wrong. How far away is our building from meeting standards that would be called net zero?
Yeah. Well, going into the design, we approached it element by element, and so that was, we understand that was the target going in, but the building is its design. We just went through each element and tried to provide the best the best components we could. I mean, we looked at having a tight envelope, energy efficient HVAC design, low wattage lighting. And high performance domestic water. So each element from us is what we approach to try to get the best. As far as trying to get to net zero, we couldn't get there with the we're dealing with the footprint. We got the building, the limited space on the roof. We do have PV solar. We're looking at geothermal. So each component, we're looking at in the context of what's available within the design, within the time frame. And so we're, I wouldn't say, I think it would be impossible to get to net zero, with given the constraints of the building, the time frame, the type of building it is, the occupant density. But we did approach each element to try to maximize the energy efficiency.
Mark, is there a measure that you can speak to that shows an increment in terms of proximity to meeting that goal?
Yes, I think we're trying, we're around 25 in the energy use intensity, which is really good for a building of this type. So, as far as the metrics go, we just have to go with what we model, what's designed, and then just try to get as best we can.
And in previous conversations, I know our target was trying to get to 23, which we saw as realistic. I believe net zero is actually sub 20 or around 20 for energy use intensity. So we're narrowing down on it, but we're not quite there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we're continuing to go after each element, each individual element, and to get as low as we can, within what's available, within the building, the elements. So.
Can you answer
it would
the
help.
solar question?
Obviously, the things that where we're missing, I would look at the fact that we can't do any more PV solar. We don't have anywhere on the ground. Obviously, we have a footprint with the building. We don't have unlimited space to do geothermal field, so we couldn't capture there. We have the density of the people inside. I guess I would take a building with less people would probably be easier. We have the envelope as it's designed. Those are the items that we're just kind of constrained with.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then Commissioner Hammerschmidt, if you wanted to re-ask the question with respect to the kilowatt hours.
Yeah, is he
solar
the right one?
panels.
It's a typo.
It was a typo, okay.
In the last iteration with our solar consultant, they were able to get our on-site generation up to 125,000 kilowatt hours annually.
Okay.
So it's not.
That's better than 100.
There's 3 zeros missing.
Yeah. I figured it had to be, but, That's an interesting response, though, to net zero, because now I'm wondering, how could you get, what would the density need to be to get to net zero? Do we bring it down 5 stories, or just curious? The passive house question, I'm still also wondering about. I don't know if...
Arbor could speak to the envelope design and the thermally wrapped nature of the construction.
When we look at buildings in the context of how we reduce their appetite for the use of energy, clearly it is the skin and the roof which we spend the most time making sure that we have a really tight envelope. And of course, the challenge there is looking at the window to wall connection, because that's where we get the most infiltration. And secondly, how we get the most efficient windows that we could afford for the project. And that's why we are, at this moment, evaluating with the contractor and all the systems that we could utilize for this building. So our big emphasis is going to be to improve that envelope more than anything else.
Okay, in order to achieve passive house.
Right. The challenge that we're hearing from all the engineers and the people providing the services to the building is that we're optimizing all the utilities or services that we could get and trying to find that balance that allows us to have that sustainability metrics at its highest. Challenging, but that's, and that's what I'm saying, we're employing a lot of people to evaluate those things and present to our client the best options for us to make sound decisions. Your comments are all great.
Thank you. Okay, and then I had a question about the workforce housing units as well. So I was a little unclear, maybe I blacked out. So I understand we're going through the county's database to evaluate all of that, but how is the city involved then? Ms. DeLeo, this is where I think I blacked out. Does the city need, if the county is helping manage the process, does the city still need involvement in some way?
I sometimes pretend to be an engineer. Sometimes I pretend to be a traffic engineer. I do not pretend to be a community development officer. But what I do understand is that the The 4 units within the city of Ann Arbor, particularly when they may be somehow part of a city program. The city of Ann Arbor, we don't have a community development department. We do have a housing commission, but the county has the staff, and so the city has a contract. The city pays the county to maintain the list, to do whatever income qualifications and are necessary. But their process is for low-income housing units, which are 60% AMI or less. If they were, I'm assuming it would be introducing an entirely new process if they were to review based on different standards, the 80% AMI.
Okay.
So we may be asking them to maintain 2 lists now. I don't quite know the full scope, but, and I can certainly get more details, perhaps, I mean, maybe postponing this project is correct, I don't know. But I can certainly get more details, but I believe this is the gist.
This is super in the weeds, but like for these 6 units, would the city have to be paying the county more to make, is it like per unit, or is it just like we give you an annual fee to maintain a list for all of the? That's okay.
That part, I don't know.
Sorry. Are you guys, Mr. Moore, I think you said that you guys are working with the county to go through this, but now I'm like hearing that there might be 2 different lists. They know that you want these to be 80% AMI?
They do.
Okay.
We've had a couple of meetings, and Jennifer Hall in the city's housing office has been part of those meetings. I was left with the impression that they already had candidates who may have submitted for the 60% program who didn't qualify because they were at that 80% or higher. Maybe I misunderstood, but they didn't say to us, oh, gee, that's going to be a whole new program.
Okay.
They just said, yeah, we will run the screening process that we do for the 60.
Okay. And then what size, I saw there was a mix of, I don't know if there was a count that I missed, but a mix of different number of bedrooms in this building? So
the workforce are 2-bedroom units, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And those would be, rotate with availability. We would maintain the number of 6, and they would also, they could be integrated into the town units as well.
Okay. I think I'm going to leave it at that for now, but I'm curious how you came up with that calculation of 300 and something units with $6 million, because the Avalon project is like $21 million for 50.
It is. I can explain it.
Awesome.
Another question.
Yeah, Commissioner Weich, please.
So I wanted to go back to the conversation that Councilmember Dish started when she asked about the standards for the reviewing of the public benefits of a PUD. So I am using the 8th edition of the UDC, February 26, 2023. I am in section 52911, section F of that section. It lists A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 7 criteria for our review. Is this what is being used to determine the public benefit, or is there an additional list? Can you answer? Sorry. Just for.
I will pull it up, but 52911F, if the title is review criteria or standards for zoning district review, that's it.
Okay, so then there's section 1, and then section 1 has 7 subsections, of which the open space, employment and shopping opportunities, the use and reuse of existing sites and buildings, the economy and efficient use of land use. So we're getting 13 times, thanks Commissioner Dish, the density in a 1-acre lot. So that, like when I went through and matched up what this development was, I got a table that it maps almost directly to this standard. So 9.8% open space, which matches to section C, 6.3 to the expansion of affordable housing, 270 units to the economy and efficiency and the provision of public services, utilities, and land use, right? But I'm hearing it differently now, that those benefits are not actually benefits.
I can speak to the staff's opinion. providing affordable housing is a public benefit, but there also is the standard for projects that 25% is the over-under.
Right.
That are exceeding that, they must provide affordable housing. And in my art review of the entire soup to nuts, providing 15%, and as you notice, there's no scaling then. Perhaps theoretically, they could provide one affordable housing unit and check that box, and they are providing. But in addition to providing affordable housing as one of the possible beneficial effects of the zoning designation, projects that exceed the underlying density or the master plan recommendation, because we will give credit to folks who are meeting the master plan recommendation, need to also provide affordable housing as part of that offset. So it was staff's opinion that 15% probably fully supports a much smaller project, maybe a project that was 6 stories, because the underlying density is R4C with a 30-foot height limit and 20 units per acre. But they are providing a public benefit of affordable housing, and they are meeting the requirement of 15% because they are proposing an increase. But it was staff's conclusion that this doesn't balance with the scope and the scale of what they're asking for in totality. Not in the absence of any other recommendation, there's no further guidance in any of our planning documents.
But we don't, can I have a follow-up? But we're not, now that we've taken out, so if this was D1, in order for them, sort of using the previous, repealed code, in order for them to get some of the height that they wanted, they would have had to hit certain affordable housing premiums. They would have had to hit the sustainability premiums in order to get those things. Now that that's been repealed, all we're looking at is floor area ratio and the height restriction. But because it's a PUD, it doesn't have that. So we're not like being able to do a D1 apples to apples because the PUD is its own zoning. So it's completely constructed as we sort of approve it.
You don't have to, you can have a different opinion than my staff report.
No, I'm just trying, I'm really trying to clarify. This is because I've already addressed the objection that I have with staff. So I've sort of like, oh, this makes no sense. So I talked to my council member, I talked to other city staff members to try to understand how staff got to this position, to try to sort of make that work out. That's not what I'm asking. I think what I'm asking is, when Commissioner Dish said that this does not meet the standard of a community benefit for affordable housing, that was confusing for me because I'm looking at Section 52911 F1F that would seem to say it is a benefit. And so I'm just trying to get the clarity on whether it is or is not. That's the criteria that we're using. That's all. Hopefully that is clearer now.
Sure. Councilmember Dish.
Well, I would also like to clarify. I'm sorry if I didn't speak clearly. Normally I write out my thoughts, and I didn't have time to do that today. My statement was that what I understood from the staff report was that given the increase in density, the benefits were not sufficient to warrant such a leap. And my statement was that my understanding was that providing the minimum required would not justify as great an increase in density as was asked for by this project. I believe that I started out what I said about this project, noting that it has many benefits and that I appreciate the provision of affordable housing. I mean, the payment in lieu to the Affordable Housing Fund. So I don't want to be misunderstood as having said that the payment to the Affordable Housing Fund was not a benefit.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
Happy to clarify.
Thank you. Commissioner Weich.
All right, so how did I get to 350 units? I looked at the math. So when 121 Catherine runs, they take $1.2 million from the millage fund, and then they use approximately 13 million in LIHTC to get to that. So I'm using that coupling. So when Jennifer Hall spoke at the Housing Week forum that I moderated, one of the things she said very clearly is she doesn't want developers to build affordable housing because it does not work. People who are on the waiting list for affordable housing do not want to live in some of these developments because they don't have access to the resources and the supportive services that they need. Plus, you're using leasing agents, so you don't have built-in supportive services inside the dwelling. And what she would prefer is that she gets the money. And she said it so clearly, so straightforwardly. And so that's the other side of what I am wrestling with, because as I look at this project, if it comes to fruition, it's going to increase, it has the potential of increasing our supply of permanent affordable housing up to 350 units. And the thing I am absolutely struggling with here at this table is we just heard from our comprehensive plan consultants, as you know, and they have said, and we need to let everyone know, one, City Council has already said that we're densifying the city because that is a requirement of the comp plan, is that they are going to bring a report back that says, how do we increase density? That's number one. Number two, there are 94,000 jobs in our city, and 76,000 people commute into our city to fulfill those jobs. We don't have enough residents in the city to fill the jobs that we have in the city because we don't have enough housing for those individuals to live in the city. So we need to build more housing, not in the abstract, but across the entire board, all kinds, everywhere. And we don't have the land to do all of the development that we want. So we're going to have to take sites like this one, convert these sites to build the housing. So I recognize that the outdated, 15 years now, comp plan doesn't account for this, but this is the space on the ground.
Thank you, Commissioner Weich. And I think everyone's had a chance to speak, so I'll chime in. Yeah, I'll chime in with my thoughts. First off, let me say thank you to the petitioners for bringing this forward. I think so much care and expertise has gone to the design, the materiality, using the step down to create, again, kind of an urban shape, as well as just, again, the public art, the way it interacts with this actual, I walked this block many, many times when I was a student. So I really do appreciate, I actually think that this is actually a well-designed building. So the variety in design meets that standard. Achieve economy and efficiency of land use, yes, absolutely. Encourage provision of public services and utilities, and providing adequate housing opportunities suited to the needs of the residents of the city, which includes students, so that's meets that standard. The one that I'm currently, and I think that this is where we're all kind of a little bit stuck. There's two. One is zoning district. The PUD shall not be allowed where it's sought primarily to avoid impositions of standards and requirement of other zoning classifications. So that's the one that I'm kind of grappling with still. I think, again, I think all of us like this project. There's so many good things about this element. I have a clarification question to Ms. DeLeo. We have we have an overlay district for South University. And so I think all of us here agree that campus is expanding. When you look at that, interface report, from 1970 to now, students represent actually 2% of the increase in population overall. So, I mean, that's why we see these high rises. Student population has grown at a much faster clip than actual just permanent residents. And you see that reflected in our demographic, the way it's changed from the 70s. So I wanted to talk really quickly about the South University Overlay District, which has a massing actual limitation of 150 feet. And how that boundary gets drawn. And again, like the current standard is, that overlay district is where it is currently. And unfortunately, again, we're administrators, we're not legislators here, right? Like we're here to administer what we see based on what we have. So as far as South University overlay district, can you talk to me a little bit about background and like intent?
I'm going to be brief in my zoning lecture. I estimate it might have been like about a 5-year process, but the city undertook a multi-year process to evaluate the previous downtown zoning, called that project A2D2 for Ann Arbor Discovering Downtown. And we ended up consolidating all of the zoning districts that were out there into 2, and we created a D1 downtown core and D2 downtown interface. And if you look at a zoning map, a little bit like a donut, that was intentional. There's the core D1, and then surrounding it is D2. And Southview is physically disconnected from the other parts of downtown. The diag separates it. But there was a commercial district right on Southview. It's been there more than 100 years. It was one of the downtown zoning districts. So it got transformed from whatever it was zoned to some D1 and D2. And it has a much smaller interface area if you look at the zoning map. And during that process, part of it's my memory's failing, part of it I was not involved, but the actual line between which properties should be D1 and D2 was done practically parcel by parcel. The D1 and D2, let me sum up. The D1 and D2 regulate so we have a quasi form-based zoning, and the D1 and D2 base zoning districts regulate the permitted uses, and the core gets a little bit more intense uses. For example, outdoor general entertainment is by right in the D1. It's a special exception use in the D2 because D2 is closer to residential, or supposed to be. But it did regulate the FAR. So it gave what you're permitted to do and how much of it you could do. And then there are character areas. And those are based on the character. And those boundaries are different than the D1 and the D2. That's more of the visual and the physical character. And that regulates the size and the shape of the permitted uses and how much of them you can do. And so the D1, the South University character area in D1, that height limit is 150 feet. It is lower than the height limit of Main Street because that South University character was much lower. At the time in 2009 of the A2D2 project, I think Southview was basically entirely 2 stories except for Tower Plaza, or Forest. Thank you. Every time. And the D2 South University character area is 60 feet. That is somewhat universal for D2 character areas. But that's the gist of it. It was parcel by parcel, what kind of character is it? Is it a core character or interface character?
Got it. Thank you for the clarification. Part of why I asked that question is, again, D1 being kind of the downtown core, D2 with kind of the insulating layer with respect to creating kind of a step down, right, from the 180 to 60 or 150 in this instance, or at least in the South University area. We've heard discussions. I think my mind is kind of in 2 different kind of tracks. There's the proportionality question, and then there's the one of the validity of the utilization of PUD. And that's really kind of where my head is at. And Mr. Moore, absolutely, I'd invite your thoughts. I want this to be a dialogue. So
yeah, let me invite you to another perspective on that issue. In terms of reading the totality of the PUD, section where it talks about affording the designers flexibility in land use and design.
Yes.
And then it talks about not crafting a project that's deliberately crafted to avoid the imposition of standards.
Sure.
With the current zoning, since we've eliminated floor area ratios, we've eliminated
Sure.
parking requirements.
Yep.
The only impositions really are height and
Correct.
setbacks.
Yep.
So that's the flexibility that I read into the code, that we have flexibility. That's the only thing left we have to play with. We can't play with FAR, we can't play with parking deviations.
Sure.
So in this case, let's say the property was already zoned D1.
Yep.
You would end up with a rectangle of a box pushed up to the street because the D1 requires a 30-foot setback
Sure.
on the east side.
Yep.
And you'd end up with a height limit that was lower, less density, and then you wouldn't also be getting the affordable housing contribution, you wouldn't be getting the geothermal, those type of benefits. Now, the thing that kind of, what way I'm reading into is something that you could argue that, oh, well, a developer would be trying to get away with avoiding something if they wanted to exceed the height limit, but they weren't already doing what the code allowed you to do to get a height limit increase. So for example, and this kind of goes to Commissioner Mills' thought about converting to all electrical use later. We currently have a section of code that says you can get a height increase over that 150 feet.
Sure.
If you put photo cells on the roof and you make it electric ready.
Yeah.
So even though we are asking for height creep, we're not trying to get away with not putting solar panels on the
Sure.
roof and not making it electric ready. We're doing both of those things. So that's how I view the reading of the code in its totality.
Sure.
And I think we're complying with it.
Gotcha. I appreciate that perspective. I do think that also makes sense. I think because with the 30% sustainability premium on height takes you another 35%. Actually, which means leads me to an easier question. I did see the geothermal element. I'm not sure that I saw anything in the supplemental regulations regarding it. Where are you guys with respect to, vertical geothermal wells? I imagine it's vertical. That's why you don't have too much to do horizontal wells.
Yeah, they would be vertical bores that would go between the foundation system of the building. And as our sustainability consultant spoke to earlier, that limits us to the total number of bores we can accommodate in the site.
Sure.
So there would be a number of bores that go down. We don't know the final number yet because we haven't done the final structural engineering because we don't have an approved project yet.
Yeah.
But it could be 60 bores or 40 bores, but somewhere in that range.
Yep.
And they might depend on the test wells that we dig for the connectivity of the soils. They could be between 200 and 400 feet deep.
Sure.
To get the kind of BTU exchange we need to get to minimize the use of gas on the site until DTE can upgrade us to a better grid.
Sure. So it sounds like the intent of the party would be to integrate geothermal. You guys just haven't gotten into formal engineering.
Yeah, and again, the supplemental regs are the 40,000 view, and the site plan is the ground level view. So if it's not in the supplemental regs, and it is in the site plan, it's still part of what gets approved by council.
Sure. Yeah. From the zoning side, I think that's a different question altogether. Yeah, to say is that the right place, for that to be in the supplemental regulations? But
I would like to add about the D1 and the D2, because I was at the meeting where D1 and D2 were drawn out, and City Council was very clear
Now the time for
that
public
Willard
comment. I'm
Street
going to
was
have to
the
ask you to
division
take a seat,
between the D1
please.
and the D2 in that area.
Not recognized to speak at this time.
Apologies for that. Ultimately, where my head is, just being fully transparent, as an individual, I really like this project. I think it's beautifully designed. I think there's so much architectural creativity to it, and I think a lot's been done to make this really fit into a pretty tight, site. I'm wrapping my head around the argument with respect to making sure that this isn't the avoiding of impositions of standards and requirements of other zoning classification, as you guys are going to be providing sustainability elements. I do understand that. And then there's the remaining idea of proportionality, right? Of is this a sufficient enough justification? And I think there isn't, unfortunately, there isn't a very clear standard as codified. So I think that for better or for worse, there is a certain level of subjectivity associated with that. So as I said, I think this is a really good-looking project. I've heard some of my colleagues here say that, perhaps it's too tall. There are questions with respect to, actually, this does actually beg the question of, is there an optimal building size that is most conducive to net zero? That's an interesting question I'd love to see some research on. But with respect to that, I'm still somewhat hesitant on those two items of proportionality as well as the imposition of standards. I'm leaning towards saying that the imposition of standards question has been actually resolved for me. And then there's that other question of proportionality. So with that, do we have any other thoughts? Commissioner Weatherby.
So I do have a question back to the affordable housing. And again, this goes to maybe the proportionality. So we have the two pieces, which is the affordable housing fund and then the workforce housing units. It seems almost as if the workforce housing units are almost a little bit more of a burden than they are supportive. And I'm wondering also where the 6.3 million comes from, because that's a number that I saw once, but in the supplemental regulations, it just says, at the contribution or rate amount established by resolution of the city council at the time of approval of the project. So I'm just wondering if maybe if there could be some flexibility in that where we could get more affordable housing support. And I don't know that the workforce housing units, that sounds complicated. It sounds like it's actually, and I like the idea, but the reality of that seems like, I don't know, because, that's still a fairly, at 80%, that's still a pretty high rate and for rent, and I'm not sure I see that as the yay, we're providing affordable housing when we're still at, $1,600 a month or per person, most likely. I don't know how that exactly works. But anyway, I guess I'd like a little bit more information on the 6.3 million and also where the workforce housing units, did that just come out of conversation and you thought it would be good to have these 6 units? Or is that part of the PUD, different housing types?
So the 6.3 million was a formulaic calculation based on the UDC. Not something we invented. We ran through the calculations as we understand them. It is typical that between the Planning Commission and City Council, staff would verify that amount, and it might shift or change based on their application of that same formula. And that's why the wording is the way it is in the supplemental regs. The 80% idea grew in part out of comments made by people who attended our citizens participation meeting, that even though they had jobs and they didn't qualify for affordable housing, they couldn't live in Ann Arbor. And they had to drive into Ann Arbor in order to work in Ann Arbor. We thought that, well, that's not a great thing. If we can have some units where people don't have to be driving into town, reducing traffic, reducing carbon footprint, that would be a benefit to the city. And so that's how we came about including that workforce housing.
And so 6 was the number you came up with?
6 was the number we came up with.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dish.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm feeling that I really appreciate the effort to address that gap, because there is a gap, but I think we are hearing that it presents administrative complexities, at least on the city's side. And 6 units is not a lot of units. And so I know that we are trying to address workforce housing with TC1. And I'm delighted that we're going to have at our work session a look at State and Eisenhower, which will have stuff there. And so I think it would be better to convert those 6 units into more money, a higher payment in lieu to the affordable housing. And I actually feel like I want to suggest that we talk about 20 rather than 15 if we're thinking of moving forward with this project over staff's negative recommendation. I do think we need to address the proportionality issue.
Thank you. Commissioner Weich.
Thank you, Chair Lee. A question for staff, either Planner DeLeo or Planner Kelly. If this was D1, and I think we had our premiums in place, it would have been 15% for the affordable housing and then 15% for solar electric ready? That would allow them to exceed the height, right?
Oh, I was going to say before or after premiums. I get it. If this was rezoned to D1, they would also need to take advantage of our exception to the height limit, and it's either or.
Okay.
Then it's either 15% of the floor areas affordable housing, and they get the 30% height bonus, or they can meet the sustainability definition and get a 30% height bonus.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Thank you. I also just want to give my 2 cents into these 6 units because I assume by calling them workforce housing, they wouldn't be for students. And, well, they could, I guess, they could be, yeah. But that's not really solving, like, the problem that I think we're trying to solve. My point was if they weren't for students, like, if I was in a situation where I wouldn't want to live in a building with 1,000 students if I was 29 years old and just trying to live in Ann Arbor. I'll also just say and I'm really not comfortable just throwing more money at this just to get, this is such an excess. I hate saying that because it's a lot of money and it does really good things, but I think it's a good benefit, but that can't be the only benefit. A question for staff on the D1, D2 setbacks. Is a variance possible?
Any dimensional variance can be requested and granted.
Cool. That's what I thought. Okay, and then in the letter that was sent to us at the end of January, dated the end of January. So I just want to read a couple things from it and then I'll ask my question. So a couple places it says, the increased density at the site allows the developer to justify the increased costs that these sustainability measures impose on the project. And then elsewhere, any lower density using another zoning designation would make many of the sustainability features that we have proposed for our PUD both economically and environmentally unfeasible. And I'm curious which sustainability measures increase the cost to the point that D1 or D2 becomes economically infeasible.
Yeah, maybe if one of my other team members wants to take another crack at it. I think what was trying to be conveyed is that it's the overall density of the project as proposed that permits the benefits. If you were forced into a D1 type of zoning, you would have such a huge reduction in unit count, that you wouldn't be able to do any of those things. Maybe not even the sustainable elements.
I'm not sure I believe that. It's just a blanket statement. I think there are plenty of projects that you could build to these sustainability standards in a different zoning district. So
my point is the D1 doesn't require that.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But to me, I think we've talked about this before, I know we can't enforce it, but that doesn't feel like big enough of a benefit to me. anymore at this point, when like everybody knows that we need to go all electric. Like that can't be a standard that we think is like as high as it maybe once was.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Comments, questions? Are we ready to go to a vote at this point? I think Commissioner Mills.
I would just say I do plan to vote no because I do think that D1 is the appropriate district, and I don't think that this it's the standard. So just a minute, I can pull it up, but it's the standard effectively that says is something possible in a different district. But if this goes forward, I would just say I would ask whether people want to make amendments specifically about the bicycle parking in the supplemental regs, because again, the site, even if it's shown in the site plan, it's the supplemental regs that will stick with the zoning. We are writing the zoning district. So if this building doesn't get built, another building that could submit a site plan, and they don't have to come back through zoning, it would be by right at that point. So that's something that I think is big different. And again, if people care about the art, I would just suggest that could be a public benefit that you might want to write in.
Thank you. Yeah.
Am I able to respond to any?
I would like to give you the time to.
Okay,
Yeah, please.
Thank you.
Christopher.
Yeah, we've been working to provide that number. Happy to put an increased number in the regs on the bicycle parking. We're not trying to run away from that at all. The other, I wanted to give you a little background. People have been curious about the 80 versus 60, et cetera. As we do develop student housing, what we note from many places that we go to is that the universities are major employers. And to what you've heard tonight, and I'm sure you've experienced yourself, congestion is derived by people who can't afford the rent here and have to live on the outskirts of town. We've done studies in other markets that have really thought that the 80% level was the appropriate level to bring in that level of employment and keep those jobs available to people without having them go through the commute. However, if that is not something that is pleasing to this group, we could offer cash in lieu of that and remove those and put that additional money towards the housing millage. And that way it would go to benefit the 60%.
Thank you. Does anybody want to offer real-time feedback to that kind of a proposal? Commissioner White.
I'm not sure I want to offer direct to that. It was the biking. So would we need to, because this is leaving our table whether we approve it or not, and it's going to, or recommend it or not, and then it will land at City Council. And what I hear Commissioner Mills saying is if we care about these two things, we should change it here, as opposed to hoping that council will change it when it lands at its table. Is that correct? Would that be accurate? Oh, good. Were you going to say something? I can pause. I know where I'm going.
I was just going to go ahead and, I'm sorry, I was just going to go ahead and say I'll be the one to say I will support the payment in lieu idea.
So I'm happy to make a motion to amend or to ask staff to amend the supplemental regulation to include the bike parking and the public art as a part of the zoning district.
And I need a second on that. Just somebody want to second that? I will second that. Okay. We're now in discussion on the motion to amend the supplemental regulation with respect to artwork, the addition of artwork, as well as the bike parking requirements for the PUD. Discussion. Let me first ask petitioner, is that a friendly addition to the supplemental regulations for both? Okay, got it. Ms. Leo, I think the requirement of public art, how specific do we need to be? I mean, like, I don't know what that mural size is, but this is the first floor, storefront of 20 feet by, a certain dimension. I don't know how specific we need to be, but it shall include a public, what do you recommend, I suppose, as far as wordsmithing this?
It's very difficult to regulate art. I would, I would say that you should be as specific as you feel necessary to ensure public benefit. I would maybe say, evaluate what types of art you're expecting. If it's just murals or paintings, could it be acceptable to switch to a sculpture? Is a water feature okay? Square footage, percentage-wise?
McSkelly.
I just want to bring up something that we hear very often whenever we meet with the Design Review Board.
Sure.
There's a representative from the Public Art Commission, I think I have the name right, who sits on the Design Review Board, and they frequently emphasize art other than murals. So we could take a look at some of the recommendations that have come through the Design Review Board. Sometimes they recommend mosaics, they do frequently recommend sculptures or consideration of things beyond murals, basically. So we could definitely take a look at that if it were to identify maybe be more vague, then we could consider something to advance to the council table.
My preference here would be not to be so prescriptive on this, and Commissioner Weiss said that he'd be willing to retract his motion. So is that where we're at right now? Could I get some other thoughts on this?
You could direct staff to develop language in the regs before it proceeds to city council.
Okay.
For example. And just to point out, Mr. Leonard is giving us some information virtually, and calculated that the 6 units would represent 2% of the overall units and would increase the affordable housing contribution in lieu to 17%.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification. I suppose that the directive would be to have staff create some level of language with respect to public art as a public benefit, as the PUD. And then with respect to the bike parking, did you want to offer some additional clarification on that?
Well, there's 468 in the underground and 100, and I wrote it down because I did math. Where did I write it down? Oh, 107 on the ground floor of the main unit. So do we write in that number and say they have to provide 575 Class A bike parking spots?
I would suggest that you either specify the number, or rough calculations, it sounds to me it's like half a space per bedroom. One space,
Okay.
one space for every 2 bedrooms. So that also could be the standard.
Or we could do 2 per unit.
Or 2 per unit.
Can we do 2 per unit? Because I feel like that's easier, because then if they change the bedrooms, then things get weird. Is that friendly?
Yeah, is it friendly to the petitioner?
So, I'm sorry, say that again?
Oh, is the petitioner friendly to the concept of adding to the PUD supplemental regulations 2 bike parking spots per unit? So I think there's about 270 units, 260 and change, 273.
I think
So
that would work. 273.
Yeah.
500.
46.
Yeah, thank you. Let me break out my calculator. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Leo, is that possible for? Are there any other discussion points with respect to those 2? Again, directing staff to craft some language with respect to public art, and also to require 2 bike parking spaces per unit. Any other discussions? Okay, we will go to a vote with respect to the amendment.
Could someone please summarize the clean final proposed amendment?
Yes, the PUD supplemental regulations would be amended to include public art as a requirement with language to be crafted by staff. And the second portion would be bicycle parking, 2 bicycle parking spots per unit would be required in the PUD supplemental regulations. Councilmember Dish.
And I am going to say that I know it's throwing money at it, but 20% affordable or payment in lieu, either one, but it's probably going to be. We can absolutely do it separate.
Okay, got it.
But I will not vote yes on this if the percentage of affordable housing is not increased.
Understood. Okay, so this vote is with respect to public art and bike parking spaces. Ms. Kelly, will you please call roll call vote?
Absolutely. Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Weiss.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Yes.
Councilmember Dish.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Mills.
Yes.
Commissioner Weatherby.
Yes.
That passes.
Okay, we are back now onto the main motion, which is the 2 on the table with respect to the PUD supplemental regulations as well as the site plan. I believe that Councilmember Dish had a, Commissioner Clark. I believe that you were interested in exploring the payment in lieu of the workforce housing requirement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so do I have a formal motion to amend the PUD supplemental regulations?
Yes, you do.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, Commissioner Weiss is a second. We're now in discussion. This particular discussion with respect to amending the PUD supplemental regulations to switch the payment in lieu, the workforce housing requirement with a proportional increase in payment in lieu. Discussion.
So, sorry.
I was just say it's a good idea. It'll reduce overhead administrative burden, which per dollar will get us more affordable housing and more effectively spent. So let's just do it.
Understood. Commissioner White.
So we're considering 17%, which is taking their existing 6 units, referring those into cash or payments in lieu. And that was, according to Planner Leonard, or Planning Manager Leonard, 2%. So that would move from 15 to 17. So that's what we're currently considering. But Commissioner Dish said she would, will you make an amendment to this amendment to go to 20, or are we discussing it between 17 and 20?
Do you want to vote on these separately?
I don't know what I think I'm trying to figure out what the number is.
My amendment,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm reading the staff report. Affordable housing requirements may need to be revised from minimum 15% of the floor area dedicated to affordable housing dwelling units to another percentage. A further increase may be necessary to offset the workforce housing units. So I will be asking for 5% on top of what is being converted from workforce housing.
So we know.
But we could debate that.
Okay, but we know the developer is willing to go to 17.
Yeah.
Based on the conversation. So now it's, do we want to go to 20?
Well, I would suggest
22.
Right,
Oh, you want it. Oh, 5% on top.
Report, right.
Okay.
I'm reading the staff report. Now, I think we should vote. I would suggest, if we are in discussion right now, that we keep these separate, because I think that the question of converting what's already in there to something else, to a different form, is relatively uncontroversial. And then we could bat around.
The 5%.
If there's maybe 5, maybe 3, we can arm wrestle, whatever, and then we'll vote. Yeah.
Okay. Understood. So as of right now, this particular amendment specifies that the workforce housing requirement or offer would be basically traded for a 2% increase for the payment in lieu. Mux Kelly, petitioner, are you still friendly with that amendment?
The only observation I'm making is that would be a 60% to an 80% trade-off, so they're not exactly equal.
Okay.
And it would depend if it was additive, as we're talking about, so I don't know really what to do with that information.
Sure. It's happening real time right now.
Sure.
So, okay, understood. So right now, could you check with Mr. Leonard if the calculation that he proffered was 60% relative to 80%? I would like clarification on that.
It was just based on the number of units. 15% of the 6 workforce housing units, the 6 units were 2% of the total number of units.
Got it. So, so it would be 17%. And then you're looking for clarification on whether the payment in lieu?
Well, I heard a couple of different numbers, so I'm just curious as to what the final motion is, so I could tell you whether we're friendly or not.
Yeah, sure. The current motion is to basically have 15 to 17% payment in lieu. Friendly to that. And no workforce housing requirement.
Yes.
Okay, so they're friendly to that. Any other comments, discussion? Commissioner Clark, anything from you? Okay, I think we're ready to go to a roll call vote with respect to this motion.
Could I also please ask for a new summarized, clean version of the amendment?
Sure. It would be that the PUD supplemental regulations would increase the payment in lieu to 17% in exchange for the removal of the workforce housing, the 6 units of workforce housing. Do I have clarity from everybody on that? Everybody on? Sure.
I'm getting a little tired, so bear with me here. Would this also be like the floor space or dwelling unit? Because I remember reading something in the supplemental regulations where it was about the percentage of floor space on, or am I making that up? I might be misremembering that. I'm just making sure it's broad to cover.
Give us just a second.
I think it's floor area.
Okay, so that'll be gone, we'll just be paying a little bit of floor space units.
Correct. That's my understanding. In the memo, it does say a minimum of 6 dwelling units shall be leased to households earning 80% of AMI. Yeah, sure. Yeah, Commissioner Mills.
My understanding of the clarification was in the supplemental regs, F1 says affordable housing dwelling units, a minimum of 15, currently it reads a minimum of 15% of the floor area shall be dedicated, and then a contribution in lieu of units may be made. I think that the proposal was to, and then number 2 is workforce housing dwelling units. The proposal was to strike number 2, and in number 1, change that minimum to be 17% of the floor area. Or the equivalent in payment of lieu. Yep. There won't be floor area that's actually dedicated to it. It's all payment in lieu. Is that what other people understood? Yes. Maybe not.
No, yes. And on page 3, there's like CB that talks about maintenance of workforce housing units. That also needs to be removed.
And as just a point of clarification, how large are the dwelling units? Were they going to be for the 6? 2 beds? So on a square footage basis, what, 900 square feet, 1,000? Could I just get
I think they were, with the exception of the townhomes, which occupied 200, I think they were a little larger.
Okay. Could you give me just an average hip shot?
Let's say 12. 12.
Okay. Got it. So yeah, effectively, just as a quick numerical clarification on a 450,000 square foot building, basically 15% of 67,500 square feet 17% is 76,500. We're gaining 9,000 square feet, technically, quote unquote. And then the trade-off of 6 dwelling units at 1,200 square feet is 72. So I think numerically, this at least makes sense to me. It may not be perfectly parable, but yeah, the payment in lieu is, again, I think desirable from the Housing Commission as far as the administration of workforce housing requirements. Okay, so Mux Kelly, is that amendment clear?
The motion, as I understand it, is the PUD supplemental regulations would be amended to increase to 17% of floor area or equivalent in payment in lieu or affordable housing in exchange for removal of 6 workforce housing units, which would be removed from the supplemental regulations along with other mentions of workforce housing.
Correct.
On that amendment, you'll just give me one moment. Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Weiss.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Yes.
Councilmember Dish.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yep, yes, sorry. Getting
Commissioner
excited.
Mills.
Yes.
Commissioner Weatherby.
Yes.
That passes.
Okay. All right, we are now back to the main motion, which is the PUD site supplemental regulation approval as well as the site plan approval. And we are now back to Councilmember Dish. I believe you'd like to talk about proportionality.
Yeah, so in view of proportionality, it is a significant increase in density over the base density. It's a significantly larger building than the building that we approved at Forest. I think requesting a total of 20% affordable housing, payment in lieu or floor area is not unreasonable, and so I would make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Commissioner Weatherby's the second. We are now in discussion with respect to the proposed amendment to increase the, to increase the affordable housing requirement to 20%.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to clarify that we are going.
Or is it?
No, it's just a 20.
Just flat 20. Okay.
Okay. So
Sure.
then.
We're in discussion.
How, if the petitioner could come on up and talk to us about this.
What? I don't.
I'm just trying to understand, like, this is a shift. The workforce housing you had already built into the plan, so shifting that seemed to make sense. So my question is, an additional 3%, how does that, do we have a number on that? 8.4 million? So I'm just trying to understand, like, what does that,
Just could I ask a point of information, though, is do we debate this with the petitioner? I mean, if the petitioner doesn't like this and we vote for it, they can try to get council to take it out, or they can say we can't do the project, but do we go back and forth?
Well, I'm asking a question because I had the floor, and
actually, I was still speaking, so I'll finish.
But you interrupted me because I had the floor. So if we're going to do that, I was recognized by the chair, and I would like to finish. Thank you. So we have been asking the petitioner how this has worked, and I would like to know from the petitioner if they have something to say about it. That's what I'm asking. So the chair can tell me no, and I'm happy to withdraw the question.
I'd like to have a discussion internally with the Planning Commission prior to asking for feedback.
Okay, sure, that's fine. I can wait on my question.
Thank you. I just want to clarify a few things from my standpoint. So what we're talking about, my understanding is that the calculation of the payment in lieu is equivalent to about $127 a square foot. Is that correct? I think I had that in like the back of my head from a long, long time ago. Planner DeLeo? I'm just trying to
Say that again.
I had the payment in lieu takeoff for the per square foot calculation is $127 a foot. I think I got that number a long time ago.
It is $126 per square foot.
Okay,
And the
okay.
PUD regulations say that when it's a number of dwelling units that's required, the payment in lieu is based on the average size of all dwelling units in the project.
Okay, understood. And actually, I think the $126 a square foot is actually the, comes from the difference between a market value and kind of the affordable, which is, frankly, I don't know if that's the right takeoff, because a lot of pricing has actually changed in like the last, the last 6 months, really. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand, the impact to the pro forma that this may have, but please do also understand that there is hesitation on this particular commission based on the proportionality of kind of like what's being given relative to what's being asked. As I had indicated, is PUD truly the correct solution? I think that's part of the grappling of this. I mean, rather than the actual the merit of the project, is we don't want to set a precedent in which we're using PUD to basically say, yeah, I think this works here because I think this helps to justify the density question that we are grappling with. And so taking a look at 20% relative to 17%, you're looking at 9.7 million right now in contribution. Oh, sorry, I did 127, 126 takeoff, sorry. And then you're looking at, it's a difference of about a $1.7 million ask is kind of what that comes down to. And so that's the proportionality. I'd like to get other commissioners' feedback on this as we deliberate this. I just wanted to set the table clearly so that we have an understanding of the metrics that we're talking about. And again, there is a hurdle threshold. Either there's a project go and a project no go, and they have a lot of LPs and a lot of debt people to convince after this is done. So. Limited partners, so they have to, them as general partners, they'll put about 10% of the project, they'll have to attract, LP capital, and then they'll leverage construction debt aside from that. But yeah, 100%. So just knowing the amount of work they still have in front of them, I wanted to invite other thoughts as far as the proportionality of this. So. Right now, what's on the table to clarify is increasing the affordable housing requirement and contribution to 20% of floor area, up from 17, which is currently as amended in the PUD supplemental regs. Commissioner Mills.
I'll be real clear. I don't know how it changes my overall feeling. But within this context, the PUDs that we've seen in the past, I believe that often we were saying you're expected to have the 15% when you exceed. Like that is an expectation. And so often, like double counting, like very commonly in the past, we have talked about what is double counting. So this idea of being able to count this as a benefit in that top bucket of standards, in my mind, this then exceeds that. To be real honest, the 2% extra of the 6 workforce housing units also exceeds that, but in terms of proportionality, and again, this is going from very low FAR to higher than D1. And so I think I would just say, from my perspective, like that certainly adds to the bucket of community benefits significantly. I think there are other criteria too, but I'll just, that's my 2 cents there.
Commissioner Clark.
Would it be possible to, not to throw another thing in here, but just the restroom fund, I don't know if the administrator, what that was, but if that could be part of this, I don't know.
I think we should probably keep it separate, yeah. But I do appreciate you bringing it up. It's the throwing $250,000 at a temporary, measure, and so I think that should be a discussion point for us, but it should be separate from this discussion. Ms. Kelly.
Just my recommendation at this point to the commission would be to postpone and let the applicant, just not specific to this amendment, but because there are such a variety of things in play, units versus square footage, the exact language of incorporating public art, the phraseology of the bicycle parking and what would be most beneficial. I just wanted to put that out there, that it would seem wise and cleaner, and I think would provide a clear proposal for the commission to, regardless of the specific amendment, to request an amended, a postponement and perhaps a suggested package of changes from the petitioner.
Understood. I would like to ask the petitioner something, because oh no, I just feel bad. I'm like, I told you, hey, don't. I would like to discuss. There's a particular reason you guys brought this to the table today, regardless of the staff's recommendation. Could you give us some idea of what made you to that decision?
I can jump in a little bit as well, not to cut you off, but when any project, this is a generic statement, when we are working through issues, revised plans, technical details, and so forth, we try to bring the Planning Commission things that are approvable. And so we would do work back and forth, but we do sometimes get to a point where there's probably nothing, unless you chop off 6 stories. We will not get to the point where both staff and the petitioner agree. And so it was a mutual decision to then send this to the Planning Commission. And so it wasn't solely their decision. It was, we needed to stop going around and around. We did 3 rounds of review. So on behalf of them, that's where it came from.
Gotcha. So it was an intentional decision saying, oh gosh,
Yes, sir.
Let's see how this goes. And to be perfectly clear, the process here would still be that whatever planning commission says, the recommendation, it still goes to city council, right? Is that correct? I just want to make sure that we are clear on process. So, okay, understood. To clarify where we are currently, Mr. Moore, did you want to add something? Again.
I just want to say, so far, what we've heard.
Yes.
Changing the percentage of the affordable, clarifying the bike, all that kind of stuff. These are the kinds of things that are text documents that we can make and forward on to staff in a couple days.
Yeah.
And so that's a fairly quick turnaround. If there's other things that you wanted us to change about the setbacks or design or things like that, it not only has to go back to planning staff, it has to go back through all the rest of the staff departments, which takes a long time, and we're up against deadlines. So in deference to Hank's comments, if they're limited to simple things that are text document change, we can do that relatively quickly.
And we're agreeable to what we've heard.
Okay, gotcha. To clarify, are you agreeable to 20%? Is that what you were saying yes to?
I think that's a hard one to answer until I understand if that's the last one or not.
Oh, sure, yeah. Good answer. So mostly like to negotiate with all chips on the table. No, I think that's a fair answer. So right now, we are at the amendment stage of applying a 20% or increasing the payment in lieu requiring the affordable housing to be 20%. Any other comments, discussions? Oh, yes, Commissioner White.
So my question is, this increase from 6.3 to 11.4, if our math is correct, would increase the per unit about $18,700. Who pays for that?
Who pays? I think that's, you're asking if we're paying for that.
Well, generally, these things are passed down. So that the person who is renting that unit is going to have to sort of cover those costs for you to make your, I'm sorry. So I'm just asking because like our tax burden already is at like $700 per month per door. and now this is here. So I'm just interested in, like, how does this work? This is mostly for me to understand how you would absorb something like this.
To be perfectly frank, I mean, we do need to look at that.
Okay.
Can I say that we have all the construction costs worked out at this stage? No, that would be unwise of us. We still have a lot of project to develop, right, and a lot of engineering to undergo. And we are working with a group that's done an excellent job for us to date in Turner Construction. But, as everyone knows, we've seen construction increase 3+% a month for the last several years. So it's a very difficult question for me to answer, but I do appreciate the thoughtfulness behind it. Yeah, we would have to study that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments with respect to this latest amendment currently on the table? Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
I guess I'll just say I don't know that I support that right now, because I think that it just throws a lot of uncertainty into, I mean, my assumption after hearing all this and reading all this tonight is, like, what I hope is that they've, like, maxed out their pro forma with all of the sustainability things and all of these other things. And so I just don't even know how this would be possible. I don't remember how much more we're talking now, like 2 to 7 million or something. That's a lot. So I don't know.
It's an addition of 1.7.
It's an addition of 1.7 to the 6.3.
Yeah, from the 17% to 20%.
So
it's
6.3 plus 1.7, or is it to
I don't
9?
I don't actually know who came up with the 6.
Anyway,
I'll be perfectly honest.
it's more millions.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm going to vote yes to that amendment.
I got 8.5. Pretty simple takeoff. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, using the $126 a square foot takeoff, unless actually because some of the square footage is commercial, and invariably I'm guessing the entire 450,000 square feet isn't being calculated on the floor area. Is that would that be a correct assumption?
Despite what it says in the supplemental regulations, I believe that it's more accurate to say the offer was for 15% of the dwelling units would have been designated affordable, and they're offering a payment in lieu of that. And then the code says the formula is based on average dwelling size.
Got it.
Am I correct?
Okay. Yeah. So my takeoffs might be a little off right now because I'm just taking the 450,000 square feet and just doing a direct application of that. So, okay, Commissioner Hammerschmidt, thank you for the comment, and then Commissioner Weatherby.
So I think for me, the petitioners came with a PUD, and with the PUD comes with public benefit, and public benefit is not always, but often monetary in some form, whether it's more sustainability or affordability, or so I think I'm not concerned about the change in the money so much, because I think what we've been saying is that you're not showing to us necessarily the benefit that a PUD would be over a standard zoning code. So I think that this is part of it. This discussion is part of where do we think that limit is? Where is that? When do we think the benefit is enough that it goes farther than, say, D1 or D2? And so I think that's part of this is just that there is most likely a money at play in what is considered benefit. And I know that not everybody thinks that throwing money at it is good, but we're looking at money for affordable housing, which is something we desperately need in addition to market rate housing. So I think for me, I value this discussion, and I realize that it is a burden, but it is also, you're asking for a PUD. And I watched the March version of this, and there was questions then that are still on the table of, is there enough public benefit? So I think it's reasonable that we're having this discussion. That's kind of where I fall on this is yes, it does affect the project. That's the point.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
I just want to make mention, just to kind of throw a wrench in here, but so with the negotiating, like, it's really impossible for either side to know whether it's 17, 20%, like, on the fly. What is the, I mean, the difference might be negligible, it might not be, but I do worry about design, not just like rent getting passed down to, because, we are a different market than what most students are coming here from East Coast, wherever rents are higher, can absorb a little bit higher rent. But I guess I start to worry about design choices, some of these nice, features and materials and things like that starting to get chipped into the more things just kind of add up and pile up on the costs. So that's, I guess, just to kind of say I don't know which number is right. I don't think anybody in this room can really know which is the correct answer at this point. So I think it just comes down to whether we make a decision now or delay. I mean, that's just a very unhelpful comment, but just want to throw it out there.
Sure, no, thank you. Any other comments? One of the things I will say is an easy kind of takeoff would be to say it's probably about $450, $500 a square foot, right, to build this whole thing. $225 million project, $1.7 million, where you're looking at about 76 bips in terms of an increase. I mean, as far as again, hurdle thresholds and what you guys have to do on your own, as well as like engineering. There's a lot of complexities to this, and so ultimately we have to decide whether we believe PUD is the appropriate approach here, whether that we have a sufficient basis for granting the PUD. That is the crux of the question, and what is currently at question right now is 17% sufficient. And since 15 is kind of the baseline expectation of when you come to a PUD, is the minimum equivalent to the 13x of density that we're getting, which we have said is also as a community is a priority. So we have to decide are we going to recommend this as a group? Now, staff, give a lot of deference to the work that they do. I mean, they have been here. There are, gatekeepers of wisdom. So, we could give a lot of weight, and their recommendation was that there wasn't sufficiency to justify the PUD. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer here, right? So that's what we all ultimately have to make a determination. And then, sometimes simplicity, we won't know if we get it right or wrong, right? What I will say is that, as me personally, I think a lot of the features of this project are excellent. I think the ground floor activation is great, materiality is great. I would certainly feel a little better about, I think Councilmember Dish has indicated that she would be more favorable towards this project if this was amended. So that's where we are currently. So any other thoughts? I'm trying to make sure that I'm summarizing everything correctly. With that, to clarify, we are currently voting on a PUD supplemental regulation amendment to state that the affordable contribution, or the affordable requirement would be 20% of dwelling units, up from 17. Commissioner Mills.
So what's happening in my head, it's just scary to let you all know about this, is, again, at what point do the public benefits make this a different project that is not actually possible in another zoning district, right? And that's where, like, when does it extend beyond?
Yeah.
So being the model of, right, like the model of sustainability makes it a different project. I'm thinking about, like, this is not a model of sustainability. It's going some, but it's certainly not there. But it also provides affordable housing above and beyond. And so that's the balance in my head. I'll be real honest that it's easier for me to make the case in my mind that it is, if all things considered, it was the model of sustainability. Then I would honestly not necessarily vote for this addition, because I already know that there will be contributions to the Affordable Housing Fund because of its very nature. And again, that it extends beyond what is possible in a normal zoning district. We don't have a zoning district that requires that model of sustainability. So to the point of like, what else are you going to ask for, right? Like, because that's the weighing in my mind, because I know that you can't ask for it all, because that's not realistic. And so I'll just say that's where I come down on this. So I personally, again, you already know that I'm on the fence. I mean, from that because I don't think it has met the thing that it is different than what is allowed in another zoning district. I don't think that that you can't do it in another zoning district. If it gets over the hump, like, okay, but I think really in my mind, to get it over the hump, it's got to be on the sustainability side. I would vote for this amendment here because if other people aren't in that boat, like I think that there's some additional community benefit that's needed, and that gets me there. So I just, in case that helps, maybe not.
So if 20% turns out to just be not feasible with it and it kills the deal, then they can it goes before city council and there can be further, or is that a major setback?
I think they would just probably say, yeah, this doesn't make sense anymore. So clearly they have some, obviously time is also extremely important. And so brevity, unfortunately, like this is what happens when you ask for a PUD, right? So this is, we're kind of in a free for all. So it's not like it can't necessarily be pulled back. City council can really, at the end of the day, do, amend it at the table, I imagine.
Procedural question.
Yes,
If
Mr.
this
Moore.
motion passes.
Yes.
At the 20%, and my clients run the numbers over the next couple of weeks and find out it's an untenable project.
Sure.
But it could pencil out at 17. Do we have to come back here to get a different recommendation at 17?
No, I think it would be that you would be at city council to request that it's amended at the 17% mark.
Didn't we get feedback from city council that we couldn't send stuff to them?
To be amended?
Yeah, because they kicked back the TC1 because we thought the notice at city council would be sufficient, but then it wasn't. So I'm just like, are there rules that we don't perfectly understand that wouldn't allow them to do that?
Well, that was a little bit apples and oranges, because that was adding entirely new components to a previously noticed public hearing. But this is, it's my opinion that what you're doing is you are saying we recommend approval of this project subject to changing and adding a public art element, changing the formula for bike parking, and at this point, changing the percentage from 15 to 17% of the number of dwelling units being. Well, no, you haven't voted on that yet. Right. So right now on the table, you're on your way to recommending approval, subject to the public art, subject to changing the bike parking, and subject to striking the entire all language workforce housing and changing the 15 to 17% affordable housing. And it seems like you're on your way to further changing 17 to 20. For discussion purposes, then you vote, you approve that third amendment, and then you approve the final motion. So it will go to it will go to city council with that recommendation. If they change the plan in some way, then they are not meeting your recommendation, and that would have to be made clear to city council. City council can vote on it either way. They can change it back to 17. They can change it down to 10%. But it clouds your recommendation, because what you are saying is your approval is contingent upon 20%. So they would be going to city council not meeting your recommendation.
Yes, Councilmember Dish.
So I think this will clarify and not confuse. If people are feeling not so good about raising it, you can be sure that I can bring this up again at council, right? So you can say, we don't want to send it forward like this. And it can also happen that other council members say, we don't agree with what our council liaison did, and so we're going to take that off. Council can do those things. So
Thank you for the clarification. Does that help, Mr. Moore? Basically, city council can revert it back to 17%, essentially, but then it would be going against the recommendation. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Just knowing some time constraints, I don't want to have to keep going.
I don't think it would have to come back to planning commission if there would, if you guys basically said, I don't think this is working out, but I think you would have a burden of, presenting that case, right? And it's like, we got a hurdle of, 16% to try and, make this work. So there's a lot of uncertainties. We get it. So, so any other discussion on this particular amendment to increase the affordable housing requirement to 20% from 17? If not, I think we can go to a voice or roll call vote. Ms. Kelly.
Would you like me to repeat the amendment number 3 as I understand it?
Yes, that would be helpful.
To require in the supplemental regulations 20% of dwelling units or equivalent in payment in lieu to be provided as affordable housing dwelling units. Supplemental regulations would remove reference to 6 workforce housing units along with other mentions of workforce housing. On that amendment, Commissioner Lee?
Yes.
Commissioner Weish?
No.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt?
No.
Commissioner Dish?
yes.
Sorry, Councilmember Dish. Commissioner Clark?
No.
I heard no. Commissioner Mills?
No.
And Commissioner Weatherby?
Yes.
Okay, I have 4 noes and 3 yays. That motion on that amendment fails.
Okay, we are back to the original motion. All right.
Well, as amended.
As amended, yes, but not including the 20. Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
I have 2 really tiny things on the supplemental regs as I was looking at them. At what point, under sustainability requirements, renewable energy, does the kilowatt hours get put in? Because right now it's blank. Because I'm not okay with 0.
It gets put in as soon as possible, and it will be completed before it goes to city council.
And it will be 125,000 or whatever it said on.
It will be what was written on the documentation, unless you amend it.
5 million kilowatt hours. Okay, and then the electrification piece, we talked about the discrepancies everywhere, and in here, it just says no natural gas connection except for emergency backup power, but then there was the thing with the water heaters, so what was up? Huh?
Yeah, that would need to be amended.
By us.
Well, we would amend it, you would amend it. It needs to be changed.
Well, I don't want to change it. I want it to, I want it to be this, so I don't know where we go from here.
I would just add that I do appreciate the effort to try and push this to all electric and recognize that there are load capacity issues with respect to, you don't want your residents having cold water. So I do, and please also hear us when we say, the natural gas infrastructure, when it goes there, probably not going to go away, but as long as that there's efforts, being made to try and, again, move towards that. I just wanted to make my position on that one clear. I'm like, that would be a very bad situation in which, at 7 a.m. you have residents calling saying, hey. So I certainly understand that. Okay, so right now we are at the original motion of the PUD supplemental regulations as well as the site plan. Any other point of discussion? I know that we wanted to bring up the $250,000 public restroom. Is that what you were going to talk about? Okay, let me just introduce that concept. Planner DeLeo did mention it's a temporary program that may get discontinued. So is that a public benefit to throw $250,000 at that, something that might get discontinued? I invite thoughts. I'm not going to make a formal motion, but.
Could we make that a general contribution to like the DDA or to services in town or something like that?
Yeah, I think we would. Can I ask the petitioner, where did that original, was that in discussions with planning, city administrator?
Yeah, I think it came from the
Oh,
city
okay.
administrator's list.
Gotcha, understood. Okay. Okay, do we have any motions to amend it? No? Okay, we're going to leave that one, it sounds like. So we're going to leave that one alone. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? I know. Commissioner Mills.
This could not be seconded. But again, because we're in the, like, what would get us? I'm attributing Commissioner Hammerschmidt to drawing my attention to the supplemental regs. And I'm the one that needs to be amended anyway, because it's not doable. I'm just going to say, I would feel comfortable voting for this tonight if the electrification were amended to just say the project will have no natural gas connection, period. Like, I understand the connection to the grid. I'm just saying that is my, like, that's what makes me feel super comfortable with this. Yeah.
You mean that to include the emergency backup as well?
I mean that to include the emergency backup in part because of this idea, like, once it's connected, when it's reliant now on this for emergency backup, in the future, it's going to make it really hard to ever discontinue natural gas as long as you have people there. So,
But if they have elevators and things.
but there are other ways to get at that from propane, like, is my understanding. But I recognize I'm in the minority. I'm just saying, yeah.
Are you making a formal motion?
If anybody wants to second it, I will make that motion. But I do not feel obligated other people to second it.
Do I have a second? Okay, we're going to continue to move on. Mr. Moore, this is another question for you. So again, the point that I just want to make sure to clarify in my head is just trying to subvert any other kinds of regulations in other districts that this could be accomplished in. So the 30 feet setback from residential is what would fundamentally change. It is required in D1, for example. That's what would fundamentally change, and this type of a building footprint could not be accomplished in D1.
This is correct.
Okay. Do you have any other kind of comments as far as just trying to make sure that I have a very clear understanding of why PUD is, I mean, obviously we've been discussing it all night, but just with respect to height and setback.
Yeah, you may remember the days when we had a planned project option, and that talked about the flexibility that we're talking about now, which was height and placement only. It wasn't talking about trying to get away with less stormwater detention or whatever. It was just saying you have the flexibility. In this case, our flexibility allows us to create a better space at the public side of the project.
Yeah.
The streetscape, by having
Sure.
more greenery and front porches and townhouse units and the kind of
Sure.
things that you wouldn't have if that building had to be pushed up to a 0 setback in order to get the building within between that property line and the rear setback.
Yep.
So not only would you lose all of the benefit of the pedestrian enhanced streetscape side of the building, if you look at the plan shape of the building, rather than just being for lack of another word, unimaginative rectangle, we have lots of fenestration indents and bump outs that give the building a much more visually appealing look. That would go away as well.
Yeah, it's the use of depth, within the building frontage. So makes sense. Thank you. Okay, it is 10:45 right now. Do we have any other comments, questions, thoughts? Okay, are we ready for a vote on this particular motion? I'm looking at. Okay, let's go to a roll call vote on the motion as amended. I'm going to read the motion real quick. The Ann Arbor City Planning Commission recommends that the mayor and city council approve the 711 Church Street Plan Unit Development Zoning District and supplemental regulations as amended, subject to the necessary revisions as directed by the City Planning Commission. And then the second motion being the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission recommends that the mayor and city council approve the 711 Church Street PUD site plan and development agreement, subject to addressing outstanding review comments. The three amendments that are currently within this proposal is removing the workforce housing requirement, increasing the affordable housing percentage from 15 to 17%. And then the last one, please remind me, somebody. It's yeah, and then the bicycle parking, 2 bicycle parking spots per unit. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to roll call vote.
Okay, on the 2 motions as amended, Commissioner Weatherby.
No.
Commissioner Mills.
No.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Dish.
No.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
No.
Commissioner Weish.
Yes.
And Commissioner Lee.
One second. I'm just trying to gather my thoughts. It's been a long discussion, so. I guess it doesn't really matter, but it matters to me. Yeah. My concern just being is this the right application of PUD? No.
That motion fails. It will be advanced to City Council for consideration.
Thank you. Do you guys want to power through this, or would you like to take okay, can we take a 5-minute break? We have public comment, and then we're on to adjournment, but yes, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh.
I could use a break just for water.
Okay. Moving on to other business, seeing as there's none, we are going to move on to Section 11, public comment. This is a second opportunity for persons to speak up to 3 minutes about any issue that is not listed as a public hearing on this agenda. We'll first call on individuals present to address the commission, then remote participants. To speak during this public hearing remotely, please press *9 if listening by phone, or use the raise hand feature if viewing through the web link. For phone access, please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-6634-1226. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand using the last 3 digits of your phone number or by name if available. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. And when speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background noises so we can hear you clearly. For either method of participation, please state your name and address clearly at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone present that would like to speak at this time? There is nobody here except us. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission remotely?
There are 2 hands raised. Adam Goodman, you have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hi, Adam Goodman from Ward 5 again. I'm very disappointed in this result, as you might expect. This meeting was frankly painful to watch. But I want to turn, it's a slightly different approach here. Hopefully by now you all have had a chance to look at the 80-page economic development report prepared by city staff and released at the end of December. It's a very, very important document, especially for looking at how the planning process in the city works. One of the things that it identifies as a major issue for the city is protecting our tax base from capture by the university. Now, I mean, this is complicated because the university expanding is not necessarily a bad thing for the city, but it is a serious threat to the city budget. And the point I would like to make to you tonight is look at this parcel we were talking about. It is literally sandwiched between 2 properties the university already owns. So if this development is ultimately not approved by council or otherwise fails because we've stacked on requirements that are too onerous to actually pencil out, don't be surprised if the university buys this site and it comes off our tax rolls. When property is not zoned appropriately for its highest and best use, that puts everybody at a disadvantage compared to the university, because the university does not have to follow our zoning code. They could build this building and you would have nothing to say about it, but we would get no property tax revenue from it. So I hope you'll keep things like this in mind. Zoning policy is a critical tool to preserve the city's tax base and balance our budget. And, this sort of, nickel and diming of, the affordable housing contribution is something that could really be shooting ourselves in the foot. I did want to mention one other thing, just for the record. I'm looking at Ann Arbor waitlist.com, which is the site set up by OCED for waitlist for units within private development. It looks like Ann Arbor City Club does have some units at 80% AMI, so I'm not sure where this idea that the city and county are ill-equipped to do this came from. That said, I do actually think that converting to entirely payment in lieu is a good idea for all the reasons that Commissioner Weich mentioned earlier. That's all for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Our final caller is phone number ending in 534. You have permission to address the commission.
Hello again, this is Tom Stolberg. I will not keep you more than 3 minutes. I found it to be a very interesting discussion. As some of you may know from things that I've said in the past, I'm a large advocate for affordable housing, including using flexible development options like PUDs where appropriate. And that's a great way to get affordable housing money. As some of you know, I have spoken, I'm not an attorney, but I have worked with attorneys And I feel strongly, like 100% strongly, that Lower Town's loss of $9 million was an illegal act. And that I feel strongly, as in 100% based on attorneys that I've worked with, that the Southtown loss of $3 million was an illegal action. I don't believe anybody's going to sue and challenge that, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't illegal. The courts were very clear on conditional zoning. Anyhow, moving on to this one. This raises the question. I think you should discuss this further with legal staff before going on to council. As former city attorney, I will not try to make this case for him. He's an attorney, I am not. Has commented on, can you bribe, in essence, for spot zoning? As much as I want affordable housing money, as much as I appreciate people fighting for affordable housing money, which some of you did here, I think it's a philosophical conversation, and I appreciate that tonight was very conversational, by the way, but it's a philosophical conversation that should be had with legal staff is, can you just adjust the amount of money to get more or get less in terms of affordable housing to do something that would be spot zoning? Again, I don't want to get into legal details on this one. I haven't done the homework, and I just am aware that this is an issue that's already been raised regarding the Forest Street project, and it's an issue worth discussing with your legal staff. That being said, I think I appreciate the conversation you all had. It was very informative, and again, the philosophical aspect of the conversation, I appreciate as a former developer myself, and I thank you all for that. Have a good night.
There's one more hand raised. Eric, you have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hi, this is Eric Goldberg calling again from Dexter Road. I just wanted to say I'm disappointed that this is kind of where we ended up. I think expecting developers to fix DTE's inability to deliver electricity to our houses. I mean, my house, I just put in I'm a huge sustainability nerd, and I live in a very efficient house, and I was 11 days without electricity last year, so I just put in a natural gas generator in my house, and this has allowed me to stay warm, to keep appliances running during power outages, and I think it's just unfortunate that we expect a developer of a building to fix DTE's issues or not allowing for backup generators when there's already gas pipes on the parcel, elevators going out of service, or students being left in the cold when DTE can't do their job. It's just, it's kind of an unfortunate outcome for us to kind of put that where we've put it, made it the responsibility of the developer to sort of like bend the laws of physics in essence, in my opinion, and the laws of DTE sucking. Finally, or not secondly, blocking density or backing the developers into having to charge $4,000 a month per unit to make this pencil out is not a win. I think that if this still pencils out, they're going to have to cheapen on materials. They're going to have to charge more rent. This is not a win. We just potentially made density not feasible here. And finally, it will be a huge shame if we have to walk away, if we end up walking away from $6.3 million or however much it ends up being for the Affordable Housing Fund. We're doing a disservice to the working classes that are coming into the city every day and would love to live here. A previous caller referred to the recent economic report. I read parts of it as well, and there's a huge demand for people who want to live here. Something like 50% can't live here because of a lack of the ability to pay rent here. Yeah, this could have put a huge dent in that. I still hope that City Council finds a way to improve it, despite you guys recommending against, because this is good for our planet. This is good for our city. This is good for the working classes. And yeah, I just kind of wish you guys, I just wish you guys went the other way and kind of sided on the side of sustainability. So please do better next time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. give it another second. Seeing no other callers, we're going to close public comment. We're going to go on to section 12, commission proposed business. Is there any commission proposed business? Thank you to everybody for lasting through the discussion, and especially to Ms. DeLeo for prepping such a thorough review. So, no other commission proposed business. I'm going to, we're on to section 13, adjournment. Moved by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Mills. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.